Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Algonquin Highlands is located on Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We also acknowledge a historical shared presence of other Indigenous nations throughout the area, and we recognize these original inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda today? Councillor Shortreed and Councillor Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, Council approves the July 16th, 2026 regular meeting agenda as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof today? Hearing none. With respect to remarks from myself, I'd just like to say that as we have received the resignation of Adele Espina as the chair of the Stanhope Museum Committee, she is going to remain on the committee. I just wanted to say how much we appreciate the work that she has done, because she has really and truly over the last number of years done an incredible amount of work on behalf of the township in museum business, and it's truly appreciated. I'm very grateful that she's going to remain on the committee and continue with some of her work. Moving on to the minutes, could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the June 18th meeting minutes? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved the June 18th regular meeting minutes be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. We have no public meetings today, but we do have delegations today. And first up is Mike March, the Director of IT from the county, and he's going to talk to us about responsible AI use. Good morning, Mr. March.
Good morning, Mayor Danielson and members of council. So I'm here today seeking council's endorsement of the county and municipalities artificial intelligence governance framework, which has been attached to your agenda. As anybody, whether you're in IT or not, over the past few years, I'm sure you've been inundated with information about artificial intelligence, AI, things like ChatGPT, Copilot, and whatnot. So it's becoming more and more part of the software products that we use, as well as staff are beginning to test the waters by using it here and there throughout the county and the municipalities. So rather than avoiding AI altogether, we're looking at establishing a framework which helps set clear expectations for staff on what's acceptable and what's not, and how to use it safely and appropriately. So the goal is to have a framework which helps the county and municipalities take advantage of AI where it makes sense, and while ensuring kind of value and appropriate safeguards for the municipality. It will help the county and the municipalities meet their proposed obligations under the Enhancing Digital Security and Trust Act, which is a piece of Ontario legislation that was passed, I think, late 2024, early 2025, which gives the ministry some powers to set some cybersecurity directives, but also establishes some AI obligations for the broader public sector, including responsible AI governance. So how the framework was first developed is we've got a working group called the Eastern Ontario IT Collaborative, which is made up of IT directors and managers across the Eastern Ontario counties. So as the chair last year, I led an initiative to kind of bring these parties together, because this was a shared responsibility and a shared obligation, and we all had to do it. So rather than all of us trying to tackle this on our own, we led an initiative as the chair to kind of bring everyone together. What we were able to do was pool some money, and we partnered with the Perry Group, who's done some work for the county and municipalities in the past. And we had the Perry Group take a look at developing the responsible AI framework. They worked with the 13 counties, they worked with the IT leadership, they surveyed staff, did some workshops, pulled all that stuff together, and using some best practices and what came out of that is the framework that sits in front of you today. So As part of the recommendations, they established, the governance framework, a risk management framework, an AI policy, AI incident response policy, all the material that we would need then to take back to our local organizations, edit as we see fit, and then hopefully move forward with. So that's what's been done to date. So the digital transformation working group, which is made up of county and municipal staff, including Michelle Adlam, we've been working together, reviewing the material that's been developed. And so far to date, we've got a draft AI policy that still needs a bit more work, and we're still working together between the county and municipalities, but that'll be something that we brought forward to the council at a later date. We've developed an intake process, a risk management process, an AI registry. So it's basically a SharePoint site that will have listed, hey, this is what staff can do with AI, provided that these tools are using these safeguards in place. And these are the red lines of things that, we're going to say as an organization, and we don't think AI is appropriate for this use. So we're developing that. And again, this material will come to all the councils at a later date once the CAOs have all had a chance to kind of review and take a shot at editing and approving it. Oh, and as well, so the framework policy and that supporting materials was just presented to the Algonquin Highlands management team on Tuesday. We got the feedback from there, so we'll take any feedback we got from that and help to edit and form the rest of the material. And we also did some AI literacy training. So we developed some training in-house, not so much how to use it, like how to do prompts and stuff, but how to use it responsibly. Things to watch out for, like bias and accountability and transparency and all that stuff. So your management teams have been trained, and at a later date, the rest of your staff will be trained as well. So I think that's about it in terms of kind of what I wanted to talk about in terms of the framework and what we've been working on and what's left to come. And as always, I'm always happy to answer any questions that council may have. But again, what I'm looking for today is just an endorsement of the framework and kind of that okay to then continue on with the rest of the work that we have planned.
Questions from council? None? Oh, Councillor Barry?
I guess I'm just curious to know what you mean by fully endorsed. Like it is a large document that we looked at. I think it's 88 pages or something. And to me, it seems like a pretty large document for a small municipality. And I know the trend is becoming more and more digital, and I know some of softwares that we use have AI components to them, and there are assets, but there's costs and risks in both cases. But I just wonder, when we're endorsing it, like, one of the things in the document is like to find sort of the people within your organization that are interested in this and sort of feed them the information and then bring it down the line. And I just wonder, how much are we endorsing of the document opposed to the philosophy?
So through the mayor. So I agree, it is a big document, but it was designed again for all the 13 counties and however many municipalities that are part of that. So endorsing, I guess, is more in terms of philosophy that yes, you endorse the fact that we do need a responsible AI governance framework in place, that for the most part, the information in that framework and kind of what it's trying to accomplish in terms of like policies, risk management frameworks, registries, all that in theory, again, sounds acceptable to council. And as I mentioned, the specifics of how that's going to roll out in terms of what that actual policy is going to look like, what the actual approved use cases are going to be like, what that risk management framework and how we're going to assess what's a responsible use and acceptable use versus what is not, that is still to come. So those are the details that will flesh out. And that was part of that was kind of a part of this whole framework governance. They knew that it would be impossible to create one document that was going to satisfy all the parties involved. So they set kind of the high level standards, and then is up to each organization to bring it back and decide, okay, well, what part of this framework is acceptable and where are changes going to be required for our specifics. So yeah, each organization will have the ability to say, yes, I think this is something that we want to use AI for, and no, this is not. So like at the county level, we've already took a look at our senior management team, and we found AI uses that, if we just went to the letter of the framework, it would be acceptable. But we've said, you know what, this is something we think as a management team that we don't want to see used in the organization for one reason or the other. So that's totally up to each municipality to decide.
Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Yeah, actually, as you speak, I recall that the one word that really stood out to me in the document was guardrails, because it put me in mind of a go-kart course where, these are the guardrails, but the person driving the go-kart is the municipality, and how fast you go, how much you want to bump into the guardrail or stay in the middle, how much you want to go forward, or, that's entirely up to the municipality, but this is the track. And I thought that was really helpful. So it did feel more like an endorsement of a general philosophy within which we can make up our own rules.
Councillor Barry?
In the discussions, I mean, it's an ongoing discussion globally, I would say, with all of the environmental concerns in regard to data centers. And by how much we, give in to AI, I know it's like inevitable that it's coming, but by how much do we now have an environmental impact on that?
Yeah, and again, through the mayor, I don't think it's any secret that, yeah, there are a lot of concerns around AI usage, and different use cases have different environmental impacts. Obviously, doing things with text is a lot less, has a lot lower impact than, say, creating generative videos and things like that. So as a part of our risk management process, we have a governance team, and when a staff member brings forward a use case, it's going to get rated against 8 domains, and these domains were taken from the federal AI framework. So there's things like impact on public trust, there's protection of information, there's bias, there's transparency, there's accountability, and there's environmental impact, as well as quality of work. So depending again on the use case, it will get rated against those, and it's a number-based rating, which then comes out as a qualitative assessment. So we'll say this is a low risk, we think it's fine to go ahead with it, or this is a high risk or a very high risk, which may either need the CAO's okay, and then it could even come to council if the CAO says, this is a very high risk, and we want to get council's endorsement. So we can bring some more information to it, and again, it's a very detailed process. It does take several hours to kind of go through when we have a use case, but I guess just know that we understand all the different risks that are involved in AI, and it's not something we're taking lightly. And we want to make sure any use case that's approved has kind of went through the gamut of, how risky is this, so we can then provide an informed decision, or sorry, informed recommendation to the CAO and then potentially to council.
I was just thinking about how much your job has become much more complicated over the years that you've been working in IT, and this is just like just another huge responsibility. Any other questions or comments from council? I guess then I'd be looking for a mover and a seconder to receive the report and adopt the framework that has been provided. Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
By Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be resolved, council received a delegation from Mike March, Director of IT, regarding responsible AA use framework for information, and that council accept the Eastern Ontario IT Collaborative Responsible AI Framework as a guiding document for the responsible use of artificial intelligence within the municipality, and further council endorse the AI framework as a foundational source of information to support the development and implementation of the township's AI governance program.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks
Thank you.
very much, Mike. Much appreciated. Is the next delegation zooming in, or okay? So is she here? In the meantime, maybe I would look to Deputy Mayor Dayu, who is the chair of the Environment and Stewardship Committee, to just give a little bit of an introduction.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. It's a delight to be able to welcome Megan today to council. What she's going to present on is the output of an initiative begun at the Environment and Stewardship Committee. One of the concerns that was received from members of the public and from council was our lack of overall understanding and awareness of the sorts of invasive species that are impacting our water systems. And with so many visitors coming through and different boats coming through and passing from lake to lake, and ATV wheels capturing things from one lake and bringing them to another lake, the intention was to try to start to create a map of that and see what sort of species were of concern, where do they exist that we're aware of, and give us a bit of a kickstart on figuring out what to do about it. So ULinks was engaged to help us create this first step. And Megan and her colleague at Trent have been excellent supports. And I'm not going to steal any more of Megan's thunder. She's going to explain the process that she went through and the results that they came up with. And I just want to say welcome, Megan, and thank you again.
Thank you, guys. So good morning, Mayor and Council members. I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to present today. My name is Megan, and supposedly alongside my partner Vidushi Hatwal, but unfortunately she is not able to make it today. So today I'll be presenting my community-based research project through Trent University. So this is on developing the first township-wide inventory of aquatic invasive species in Algonquin Highlands. Next slide, please. So first I would like to do a small land acknowledgement. So we respectfully acknowledge that this work was completed on Treaty 20 of the Mississauga Territory. We recognize that the stewardship of Indigenous peoples provided to these lands and waters for generations. Protecting healthy aquatic ecosystems aligns with that long history of environmental stewardship. I would also like to acknowledge the Township of Algonquin Highlands, ULinks, and Trent University for helping me along this project. So the purpose of this project was to create a baseline inventory of aquatic invasive species throughout the Algonquin Highlands. So before this project, there was no single inventory bringing all the available records together. So what we wanted to do is compile existing records, identify invasive species that are currently present, and provide maps that can support future monitoring and education. So this gives the township a starting point for future stewardship and decisions as well. Next slide. So what were our goals? So again, is to develop the township's first comprehensive inventory to identify invasive species posing ecological risk, and map where these species occur, as well as create an educational resource that supports prevention. So prevention is much more effective and less expensive than trying to remove invasive species after they become established. So looking into our study area, you can actually skip this slide to look at the map. That's okay. So here is the map. So our study area focused on the Algonquin Highlands Township. So we excluded Algonquin Provincial Park because it's managed separately. So this region contains multiple lakes connected through 3 major watersheds. So we have the Muskoka, Lake Simcoe, and Gull River watershed. So because these lakes are all connected, invasive species can spread beyond a single water body. So it's important to us to map this area pretty well. So next slide, please. So going into our methods, we use publicly available citizen science databases, so like iNaturalist and EdMaps. So we search the aquatic invasive species under the Ontario legislation, so the Ontario Invasive Species Act. And that's how we determined which species that we're looking for. So each observation was reviewed and compiled into a very large Excel database. So the information included species, water body, GPS coordinates, as well as number of observations and data source. And then we mapped using ArcGIS Pro. So you can go to the next slide. So this was to visualize where these species occur in the township and also to identify hotspots. So citizen science has become very valuable, because municipal monitoring, sometimes resources are limited, and also residents can contribute to observations across many lakes, which is very helpful. So at the bottom here, you can see how we kind of symbolize each group. So we have plants, fish, and invertebrates. So as we go through all of our maps that we created, these symbols are very helpful since they represent each different species, but they are categorized in like color. So like plants goes from like pink to like purple, and then fish like green to blue, and then invertebrates from yellow to red. So moving on to our results. So we documented aquatic invasive species as well as non-native species in the 3 groups, so aquatic plants, fish, and invertebrates. So most importantly, we did not find any prohibited invasive species under the Ontario Invasive Species Act. However, we did document several restricted species that were already established within the township. So these species, just to name a few, we have zebra mussels, spiny water flea, Chinese mystery snail, Phragmites australis, and purple leaf strife, as well as many others. So invertebrates had the highest number of observations. However, aquatic plants had fewer records, but occurred across multiple lakes. So these maps in the next coming slides provide the township with the first kind of spatial overview of aquatic invasive species. So here we have plants. So we have European frogbit, curly leaf pondweed, yellow iris, Eurasian water milfoil, Phragmites australis, and purple leaf strife. And then next slide. Here we have invasive fish. So we have rainbow smelt. And just to note that rock bass and smallmouth bass are non-native species. However, they are noted to be one of the most occurring, and they also do affect the ecological importance and health of the lake as well. So it was important to research those. And then we have invertebrates. So we have zebra mussel, banded and Chinese mystery snail, and spiny water flea. So as we note that most of these species occur in the southern portion of the township, so that will go into our discussion later. And then we have just a few graphs to represent the numbers. So this is an overall graph of all of our species. And then the next slide should be the individual species within their categories. So we can see the individual numbers there. And then this is an overall graph of how many species were documented in each lake. So this gave us kind of an insight on like our hotspots to identify. So we have Bashkung Beach and Cushhog Lake that were the top 3. So looking at those for future monitoring priorities as well. So we can actually skip this slide since I already kind of touched on this. I know that my time is like kind of short. My project is very long. So the goal, we also created an educational pamphlet. So the goal of this pamphlet was to help residents and cottagers recognize invasive species, understand why they matter to the lake, as well as encourage reporting through citizen science databases. So public awareness is one of the strongest tools available for prevention. So as we go into the next few slides, we can see the pamphlet that I created, as long as like with the information that we gathered from this report. So this is intended to be published sometime to other cottagers around the lake in the township. So the next slide is also the back of the pamphlet. So we can see our large map there, as well as a few pictures, and also how to identify all the species as well. So going into our discussion, Algonquin Highlands is a headwater region, and that means that the invasive species introduced here have a very large potential to spread downstream into connected watersheds. So species like zebra mussels, as well as other invasive aquatic plants, can alter water quality, nutrient cycling, and aquatic food webs. So our hotspots identified were Boschkang Lake, Beach Lake, then our secondary priorities were Cushhog, St. Nora's, and Big Hog, as well as Halls Lake. So rather than monitoring every lake equally, resources can be focused on these higher risk areas, as well as boat launches as well. So prevention and early detection can remain most effective of these like management strategies because controlling established invasive species is often really expensive and difficult. So moving on to our conclusion. So this project produced the township's first comprehensive inventory of aquatic invasive species. It established a baseline for future monitoring. It identifies priority lakes for stewardship, as well as supports evidence-based planning and public education. Sorry. So we hope that this information can continue to support the township's environmental stewardship efforts in the years ahead. So moving on to our next step, our next slide. I think I have a map. Okay, so this is our map of all of our species. This is also the same map that's on the pamphlet as well. So moving on to our next steps and how we can move forward and recommend. So continuing public education as much as possible, encouraging citizen science reporting, prioritize monitoring at hotspot lakes and boat launches, responding quickly to any new detections, and updating this inventory as new observations become available. So this inventory is intended to become a living resource that grows over time. And thank you guys for your time and attention. I'll be happy to answer any questions that the mayor or council may have.
Well, thank you so much, Megan, for the work that you've done on this and on your presentation. I guess I would look forward to council for some discussion on how we might move forward, some things that we might do. And how, like, just as an example, we see citizen science integration as one of the next steps. Like, how do we go about doing that? So I would just look for some discussion and thoughts from council on moving forward. Councillor Shortreed.
I think one of the best things is the pamphlets at the lake associations. I think they're going to be really well informed with those, and that'll start the ball hopefully rolling.
Well, I would definitely see that we would send the information out to particularly those highly impacted lakes, but possibly send it to CHA as well for distribution to all of the lakes, so that it's just, kind of top of mind. I'm sure that they do have some information on this. I know that various lake associations have had presentations on, particularly the mystery snails. And the work that's being done there. To my knowledge, that's the only real work that's being done specific to invasive species is the licensing and collection of mystery snails. It seems to me that that's a pretty hard thing to keep up with because they multiply so quickly. But any other thoughts on how we might move forward? Councillor Richards?
I think the bigger threat is actually tourism in this area. Most of our cottagers here are keeping their boats within their lakes. They don't take them to other lakes. It is tourism that comes in that is in and out of one lake or another all over Ontario or further. So how do we stop that? And the province certainly promotes draining your bilges before you enter one lake to another, but we don't have any pump stations at our docks and landings to do so, and it's a pretty expensive endeavor to get them. So I think a lot of the lake associations have done a lot of work already on invasive species and the risks, and they're pretty well educated on that, but what to do, how to capture stopping it. I think is a bit beyond all of our reaches. Other than continuing to scream and stomp our feet about it, unfortunately.
Other thoughts or comments? Councillor Barry, then Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Well, I think, this obviously isn't just an issue in Algonquin Highlands, but I do think that it'd be beneficial for like the Environment Committee to help educate through our communication coordinator and have some, e-blasts or information out on the website. I wonder if some of this information could be shared on our website. I do wonder, and by no means am I a scientist, but I do wonder that from what I could gather from the study, there seems to be a large collection of invasive species sort of at the lower part of our watershed, and how this study would have looked 20 years ago. Would it have been higher? Have things just moved down? And if things are moving down further to like the next township, what could be done going forward?
Well, I think there's no question that we would, be able to put this presentation on, or link to the presentation on our website, for sure. As far as messaging, we're having our communications coordinator do messaging. I would look to the Environment and Stewardship Committee to work on or make recommendations about that messaging, bring it through council, and then, on to Chad. Definitely, I think we can do that. Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Yeah, thanks. And we have been working on that, and we've also been asking Parks and Rec, what are the signs currently on those landings, and could they be updated? Does this information provide any more information that we could integrate? So there's been a bit of conversation back and forth. I think what a map like this offers is information in two different kinds of ways. So yes, we see that there is a lot of reporting of invasive species in the south, but Megan, would you agree that the insight for the north is that maybe we're not reporting as much from the north? The map is where citizens have reported sightings. It's not where a scientific survey has concluded that those species do or do not exist. So in a way, yes, definitely focusing monitoring on the south, and maybe focusing additional effort into awareness raising in some of the northernmost lake associations who maybe haven't gotten this sort of information in the past. Because paradoxically, it could be that the greatest indicator of success of this work in 2 or 3 years is more blips on this map, because it means that there are more people who are reporting the species that are already in the lakes. So I think there's action that can be taken there too. Yeah, very helpful.
One thing that I noted is that I don't see anything, although it's within sort of the same general area. Maple Beach Cameron, as an example, there, no information with respect to that. And yet we just recently heard that, that there's a large mystery snail population and work that's being done there. So somehow we need to, get the flow of communication going back and forth between the lake associations and ourselves. How we go about getting people to do things is like a bit of a question. I think I would appreciate hearing, or I think council would appreciate hearing, if you're having discussions with say Parks and Rec or other departments and making suggestions that information come back through council.
If I may, we've requested information to understand the status quo, but we've not made any direct recommendations. We wouldn't do that, of course, without council.
Councillor Barry?
Just following up with your comment about MBC Maple Beach Cameron. I think there was one person on, I believe it was Beach, that had solely themselves found over 6,000 snails. So I mean, like citizen scientists, and then there's like citizen activism. And I think having some of those heroes within our community that can show how you get the licensing, how you remove them, the safe way to do it. Like there's a lot of people with good intention, but maybe don't know how to go about it. I think it's a good thing to collect the data, but also what's the next step in eradicating some of this so things don't get worse.
Well, I mean, I think we want to make sure that we're not duplicating work that's already being done, because I mean, every lake association that's active has a lake steward. And maybe there's some mechanism that we can establish for communications with the lake stewards. and see what we get, you know, coming back to us, working through CHA. You know, I know that that's the Coalition of Halliburton County Property Owners Association. That, you know, they've been doing a lot of work and, you know, trying to encourage all of the other lake associations to continue this kind of work. I'm just not quite sure how we um, guide this or direct this work. But, you know, I guess we would look to the committee to bring back further recommendations on what they think is feasible.
Yeah, and I know the committee is looking forward to having that conversation. What this project really helps us to establish is that baseline. And it's a baseline that we didn't have a year ago, and now we've got it. So that's where the real beauty of this initiative came in. I'm curious to find out, you know, through Andy, what continued possibilities there might be through ULinks. And indeed, in terms of the activism, to Councillor Richard's point, hard to know how to impact groups who are coming in who, you know, who are changing from lake to lake. But we can't do anything without information, and now we're starting to get that baseline.
Mr. Card, you'll have to come forward.
Video. Thank you. I just wanted to add to the conversation that the Coalition of Halliburton Property Owners Association in 2021 did approach the township to put up invasive species education signage at all of our docks and landings. So that was completed and is currently in place.
So does that cover the issue of boats moving from lake to lake and, you know, that you need to clean off your boat before you move between lakes? Does it cover any of that kind of information?
It does have that type
Okay.
of information on it as well. Yeah.
Well, that's a good start, because I know that I'd heard from one member of council that, you know, maybe we need to look at what we've got posted at our boat launches. So we've already got some good information there. Thanks, Chris. Any other comments or suggestions, thoughts on moving forward? Well, again, you know, thank you very much for your presentation, and I would look for a mover and a seconder from council to receive the presentation. Councillor Short-Reed and Barry.
By Councillor Short-Reed, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, council received a delegation from Megan Shear from Trent University regarding aquatic invasive species for the Township of Algonquin Highlands for information.
All in favor? And we look forward to hearing further recommendations or thoughts coming from the committee. So we have no presentations today, and for the first time in a long time, nothing under the consent agenda. So next up is building and bylaw, and what a timely arrival. So good morning to you both, and I gather you have some updates on the clean and clear bylaw.
Yeah, good morning, Mayor and Council. Yes, apologies for the misjudgment in time.
I thought it was perfect timing.
Good morning, Mayor Council. So in front of you are the recommended amendments as a proactive response to evolving case law, as well as to reduce potential exposure to any charter-based legal challenges. And it's looking to modernize the bylaw to realign. So if there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to attempt to answer them.
I would look to questions, but I would also look at, I mean, as we update our bylaws or, you know, put new aspects in each bylaw in place, I would, you know, like to see that there's some assurances that our own bylaw department is going to be actively keeping an eye on things and doing enforcement. This is, I'm assuming that would take place as opposed to us just waiting for someone to complain about their neighbor.
Generally, the process that we've followed with Clean and Clear is it would be complaint driven to allow us to enter onto the property to have a baseline to start that process. I guess that's something that we may need to discuss or have council discuss if it's going to be proactive, because it may involve more enforcement officers to be able to attend. But at this point in time, yes, we've been complaint driven to step on property.
I definitely believe that we should be at some point having a discussion about being more proactive in bylaw enforcement. I mean, these are our bylaws. We have bylaw officers in place who should be enforcing a lot of this stuff, and I can't, you know, I've had people, residents complain to me that, you know, that the bylaw officers just drive by things. And there's a lot of concern on the complaint-driven aspect of our bylaws that, you know, people are frightened to do that in some instances. They don't want to develop, angst between property owners or, you know, infighting or problems. So I really think that we need to look at the whole complaint-driven aspect of our bylaws and how we move forward with enforcement. I would look to members of council for thoughts on the changes that are being proposed to the bylaw and on how the bylaw is enforced. Councillor Berry.
In regards to the changes here, I'm fine with accepting them as is. I do remember this bylaw coming to us in several iterations. And I personally am in support of complaint-driven bylaw enforcement. I do think that some of the things specifically within this bylaw are open for some interpretation of refuse. And I do support complaint-driven bylaw enforcement. I think that there was 3 E's: education, enforcement, encouragement.
Well, I'm not suggesting that people can't complain and that we wouldn't follow up on that complaint, but I think that we need to be a little bit more proactive as well, because people are afraid to complain about their neighbors.
I know, I'm just
And-
saying.
And just to finish, you know, there's, it's very subjective. Somebody can look at their neighbor's yard and be really ticked off about one particular aspect, but it's not actually something that we're dealing with in our bylaw. So I just like to see us approaching it from both directions.
I think my concern is there's a difference between accumulation of weeds or grass or height of grass versus like a leaking oil tank or some sort of metal debris that has an environmental impact. I have more concerns with environmental impact than aesthetic observation.
Well, yeah, I hear you, on that. I think that is most important, but I also think that, we're dealing with some properties that are unsightly. If we want to put forward a vision of who and what we are, that there are a number of properties that I know that members of council, previous councillors and members on this council have complained about properties and their condition, and nothing has been done about it for years. And that to me is it's not good enough. But I would look to other members of council to comment on how we move forward. I mean, this isn't specific to this, it's more of a general conversation about bylaws as a whole. We definitely want to hear if there's any concerns with this specific bylaw, but thoughts on enforcement as well. Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Thanks. I think the changes are really clear. I certainly understand them and would, I believe, be able to recognize when something is a problem and not. So it's an improvement over the previous version. So thanks very much for that. And I'm happy to support what's been proposed as written. To your question or comments about, bylaw enforcement, I also support the 3 E's, especially when it comes to visual things. I'm in alignment with Councillor Barry. I think when something has a direct environmental impact or a human safety impact, that's a different story. But when it comes to things like this, I think the 3 E's are entirely appropriate. And I would put to bylaw, could there be perhaps an uptick on the education piece where, if someone has a clearly overgrown space that's in violation of what's been written here, that a pamphlet be put in, in the door, just saying, hey, guess what? We've got this bylaw and this is our education piece for you. And so it's a little action, but it's not the full enforcement with a report written up, etc. Just a thought.
And it's an excellent thought. You know, I would have to say that I know you yourself have raised concerns about a particular property and its condition and, you know, with not just growth, but dead vehicles or things like that, or buildings that are in derelict condition. And, you know, that's one of the things that has not been followed up on. Go ahead.
No, I hear you, but I think just keeping in the context of this particular change.
It
to the
is in
bylaw.
context with this bylaw.
Okay.
That, which is why, you know, which is why I'm just sort of bringing this up as a discussion point. Councillor Shortreed.
And I agree with Deputy Mayor Dayu. I think education is a big part of it. People have a mindset, we live in the country, it doesn't matter, we're not in the city with neighbors everywhere. And I think that is part of the mindset that you're out in the middle of nowhere, what does it matter? Right? You can't see your neighbors, what does it matter? Right? I think education is a huge part because I don't think anyone's aware of what our bylaws are.
Any other thoughts or comments specific to the bylaw? And I'm sorry, Mr. Moore, you had a comment.
Yeah, just on the general enforcement, I fully embrace the educational aspect. I think that's a great compromise. The reason why we do complaint based on a lot of our bylaws, obviously not parking or dogs at large, because those are things that happen now and need to be enforced. We do complaint based on things like clean and clear, so that we're not perceived as picking on somebody. And we don't have the resources, to Kristen's point, to start at one end of the township and work our way across, because everybody's gonna have a bit of a violation to a certain extent. So that's the reasoning really behind the complaint based. But the educational component sounds like a great compromise where we can, as you say, not go by with blinders and throw a pamphlet in the door and start to educate without actually going in with guns a-blazing and, you know, the fines. So we will work on changing our practice on that front.
So when it comes to education, how does council envision that happening? A pamphlet through the door, or, I mean, obviously we need to provide information on our website. Is there anything else that you can see that we can be active about? Councillor Shortreed.
Our communication coordinator could use social media as well. That's a big draw.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Then I would look to councils for a mover and a seconder to adopt the changes to the bylaws. Or would that come under the bylaw section of the, or just receive the report? Okay, to receive the report. Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Richards, be it resolved that council receives report BLDG 826 regarding amendments to the Clean and Clear bylaw 2023-11 for information, and council directs the bylaw containing the proposed amendments be brought forward.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
So next up, Parks and Recreation business. I see the first item is a discussion that I had asked for this discussion to be put on the agenda based on discussions that I'd had with various members of council with respect to the ability to see the Dorset Rec Center rented out on for evenings or in evenings for events like weddings, family gatherings. It is an absolutely beautiful facility. And as we can see how beautiful it can look at events like the volunteer appreciation event, the work that we've done and the money that we've spent on the center, it would just seem to me that it would be important for us to seek a way to make that facility available for events in the evening. I would look for thoughts on that. I mean, obviously, we would, you know, have to see some options or a report come back from yourself, but I'd look for thoughts from you, Chris, and then comments from council. Go ahead.
Sure, thank you. So currently we do allow rentals and events during all operating hours, which are 9 to 9 Monday to Friday, and then 10 to 4 on weekends. It's outside of those hours that's for consideration. And certainly it's something that we can look at putting some options together for. The one consideration to make is just around security of the site outside of hours, and that we have an open desk space there, et cetera, for example. So we'd need to consider how we might be able to lock up areas of the facility that we don't want available, and whether or not we want to staff after hours rentals. And if that's the case, I just need an opportunity to put together staffing costs and considerations, et cetera. But certainly look to council for their opinions.
I think given your comments about the fact that there's an open desk there's some areas that we wouldn't necessarily want people to have access to. That, you know, would seem to me that one of the few options that we have is to look at how it can be staffed for events. And that, you know, that may entail talking to existing staff or looking for, you know, other options that are available. But, you know, I can't see an event, you know, a large event happening in an evening without somebody being there to keep an eye on things. Councillor Shortreed and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
And I think that the cost of staffing should be passed on to the renters. I think that
Mhm.
having an incentive for staff, whether it's time and a half or whatever, is still being passed on to, the cost is being passed on to the renters. So if we have an incentive for the staff to work and there's no cost to the township, it should be a win-win, because it's not going to be very often. You know, there might be a couple of weddings, or the Lions do their free dinner, and I'm sure they'd rather do it on a Saturday than a Wednesday night, because they probably get a lot more people coming. But I think there's lots of ways to resolve it without any cost to the township, and it'd be open for people to use. But I think we do need staff there. I don't think you'd be able, I wouldn't feel good having it certain places locked up and people just using the rest at all.
Good points. Deputy Mayor Dayu.
What she said, it's exactly what I had in mind.
Yeah, so any other thoughts or comments with respect to that? I'm not quite sure if do we have a resolution or just, so I guess, you know, it would be the council's direction that we ask you to look at some options to bring back for us. And of course, we, you know, particularly with respect to the cost recovery aspect of it, and you know, see how we can move forward. Would really appreciate that.
Absolutely, I will do.
Okay, the next item is a discussion on library patron passes for the Dorset Tower.
Yes, so thank you through you, Mayor. This was a consideration that was originally brought forward to our Deputy Mayor Dayu from the CEO of the Lake of Bays Public Library, looking for opportunities to provide patron passes at the library to be used at the Dorset Tower. Following that, there was discussion with the county's library where they're interested in the opportunity for the same consideration. So for consideration for council today is whether or not we'd want to move forward with offering essentially a card to the libraries. It could be signed out by library patrons that could grant them access to the Dorset Tower. From the cost perspective of putting this together, it's a low cost in that we'd be able to print the cards. There's very little cost associated with that. Questions I'd have for council if we do want to go ahead, and this is the same questions that the libraries had, is do we want to limit the number of uses, a number of circulations for the year? And should we charge a fee to the library for this, or my thought would be just giving it to them free of charge. And I'm also suggesting that this would apply to our walk-up, our car, and our motorcycle fee categories. So it wouldn't apply, of course, to commercial situations like tour buses, et cetera.
You know, I don't, generally speaking, I don't disagree with the philosophy necessarily, but I do believe that it's quite contrary to previous discussions we've had about people from outside of the municipality being charged different fees than people from within the municipality or the county. And one of the things that we have put in place is a higher fee for use of the fitness center for non-residents. And so, you know, I find it that this is part of this is a little contrary to previous discussions we've had, and I think we need to be careful how we move forward with this. But thoughts from members of council? Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Yeah, I appreciate that. However, in this instance, the library as an institution works quite differently. They already have a reciprocal arrangement with Lake of Bays, given that there are a lot of Lake of Bays people who already use the Halliburton libraries, and there are quite a number of Halliburton folk who use the Lake of Bays libraries as their first port of call. You know, Oxtongue is the primary example. The main library for Oxtongue is Dwight. And with the arrangement that exists between the two library systems, there is a free pass to go back and forth between the two. So this would just fit quite naturally in with how the libraries operate. And it would be at that stage an asset of the library to do with as they see fit. That's the principle that drives my thinking on this.
Other thoughts? And we will have to land on, you know, if we decide that we're going to go ahead with this, to Chris's questions about costs or do we limit the number of passes? Because there is a loss of revenue, and not necessarily great, but it's something that needs to be considered.
And that's why I
Councillor
think
Shortreed.
it's $2.25 a person. It's not a huge amount we're looking at. But I'd like to see something reciprocal, like maybe skating passes to the Baysville Arena. Like to give
To the, I'm
kids-
sorry, to the
to
Baysville?
Baysville, they have an indoor arena. So it's used all winter. It's probably opening soon, but it'd be nice for Lake of Bays to say, if you do this, we'll offer our passes to the Halliburton libraries. And then at least we're getting something in exchange. Because I really don't think a lot of people are going to use the passes. You have to have a car to get there. Right? So, I mean, what are you saving? It's not a huge savings for people, but it's not a huge loss for the township. But
So
if Lake of Bays was willing to say, here's this many rink passes and you give us this many tower passes, it's a
But now
wash.
you're moving outside of, you know, what you discussed about how the library systems are integrated and share. You're sort of, to my mind, maybe moving into the shared services
True.
agreement and something that, you know, which makes it a bigger discussion. Councillor Barry?
I'm in full support. I don't know if a number, can we have a number? Like I would support, I don't know, 10 passes or something to that effect. It's a minimal amount. I think it's like the greater good of the community and the neighboring communities. And regardless, if you're in Lake of Bays and you have to come and, you know, it could involve going to a library out of your district, but with some of the agreements that are in place, that's already occurring. So I'm in support of it. I didn't know there was a arena that was available in Dwight, so I think that's a great or Baysville. That's a great opportunity. I like the way that libraries are evolving, and in, you know, these economic times, if a family can go and get something, even if it is $2, to some family that might not seem like a lot, to others it would seem like a lot. I think for the goodness of the community, I think I'm in full support.
Councillor Richards?
I'm not sure I'm even understanding the basis of why. Like, what is the library gaining? Is it foot traffic that they're trying to gain from having these passes there? Like, I don't know, but I support it because I do think it's a very minor amount of revenue. And I find that we're putting a whole lot of work around something so small.
Councillor Barry?
I'm pretty sure Parks Canada did something like this a few years ago where they had passes that came to libraries. So you could go into passes, and then I think it maybe left the library and it just became online that you could get a free pass to go in.
Mr. Card?
The goal, as I understand it, would be equitable access for people who may find the costs prohibitive for them.
Which is
Touching
which is
on the
becoming
10-foot
more and
pool.
more common,
Pardon me?
which is becoming more and more common.
So, okay, I guess we need to determine whether this is going to be for all of it, like, is it going to be for everyone in the library system in Halliburton County and Lake Bays? Or just Lake Bays? Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Certainly the Halliburton County Library would appreciate having these passes too. But I would suggest and remind that once those library passes are offered to the library, that's an operational decision of where they go and on what terms they're, it's an asset of the library to disperse. It's, I don't think, really up to us to say how they use them.
It's an asset of the townships as well. It's being discussed. I mean, it's just, I think we need to discuss whether or not we're going to offer it to just Lake Bays, or if it's going to be offered, like to both, all throughout the library system, which is probably, and I see that being the direction we might go. Councillor Richards.
I wouldn't be comfortable offering it to Lake of Bays without offering it to Halliburton County, so.
Exactly.
Halliburton County first.
So, with respect to, I've heard suggestions of limited numbers. Councillor Barry referenced it, you referenced it yourself, Mr. Card. I would look for thoughts on that. 10 doesn't seem like a, are you talking about, you mentioned the number 10, is that per library or per municipality, per library system?
No, like, the truth of the matter is if it's to, to help with disparity or something, I don't know if someone from Highlands East is going to get a pass to go up all the way to Dorset.
If they can't afford the fee to get-
$2, but I don't want to limit the family that has to be going up to Algonquin Park anyway and is using this as an opportunity. So I don't know. 2 passes per library. I have no idea.
Councillor Richards and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
I would say it should be limited to what could be absorbed to the tower. Like, I would look to staff to kind of come up with that number. Like, if you had 40 passes out there, free at libraries, and 40 people came on the same day, like, how would that all function within your realm? Or is 10 enough? Like, I think those.
10 is a total or 10?
Well,
per-
this, how do we know? I think this is up for staff to kind of tell us what they think is appropriate for any given day. Because if they're out there and they're free, do they still have to go through the booking system to go to the tower on top of the library pass? Like, how does that all function?
Madam CAO.
Through you, Mayor. Yes, I'm just wondering, what was the intention of the ask? Was it that all library passes throughout Halliburton County and Lake Bays would, like, you could present your library card at the tower and you'd get in? Or was there an intent of, you get 25, the library gets 25 and they get to hand them out as they see fit? I guess that's what council needs to kind of understand, and then maybe go from there.
Deputy Mayor Dayu.
I think a good analogy to this would be like their tool lending library that some townships have, or other types of lending libraries. Libraries really are evolving considerably over Ontario, and I'm sure in other jurisdictions as well, where it isn't just books, it isn't just printed materials. You can go in and borrow a hammer instead of to fix the thing in your wall, instead of needing to buy a hammer at Home Depot and then return the hammer afterwards, or any number of things. It's quite an incredible evolution, and I think the spirit behind this is part of that evolution. It's to say, okay, we've got, and I'll make it up, we've got 2 library passes, we've got 2 passes to the tower here, which you can check out just the way you could check out a book, or you could check out the hammer, exactly the same. And if it's not available, then it's not available, just like the hammer, just like the book. If it is available, that's great. I think it's really all about what can we do to make things easy, accessible, affordable for the people who are paying taxes into the library system, so that they can enjoy these services and participate more. I think it really is just that simple.
I have to ask, you're serious? You can go to a library and borrow a hammer
Absolutely, you can.
here in Haliburton County?
No, not, the Halliburton library system is not that evolved yet, although it may be. But what you can borrow from a library in greater municipal areas is extraordinary and incredibly helpful. You could go in some places and borrow a shop vac to help clean up the damage from a flood, because you absolutely cannot afford to buy a shop vac from Home Depot in order to clean up a single flood. The libraries are there to make people's lives happier and easier, and this is a part of it.
Wow. Councillor Richards.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily only about affordability. It's about practicality. We're all having homes that, are full of stuff because we're no longer borrowing from our neighbors. So we all have to have the ladder and we all have to have the shop vac, et cetera. And in the urban centers, these lending libraries are not just about books anymore. So it's something that should be up here too. Hopefully our library board will go that way. But back to this discussion. I find this becoming really more and more and more complicated for such a small thing. And that's where I've been trying to go with what are we trying to achieve with this? My mind is thinking, a pass that is booked in and out with a library, so how many passes and circulations could the tower absorb at any one time? On top of paying patrons that come, like, I don't know, is 25 a number to be spread around the libraries? Would they still then, once they take out the pass, then they have to still book their slot, like if it's during fall colors? It's like, this is getting really
And
complicated.
how long do
for
they
staff.
keep the card if we're issuing a card that needs to be returned?
Yeah, it's not an easy ask we're asking here.
Mr. Card?
As far as the capacity question goes, I don't see it affecting in any way capacity issues at the tower. During the fall colors is when we do run into those capacity issues, and that's why we have the pre-booking system in place. They would still have to pre-book after they signed out their card. And what I would suggest is that they are cards that can be signed out. And why not try it by starting with 5 cards to each library system with an unlimited amount of circulations, and then we can judge based on that and react and respond if we needed to. As a library user myself, when you sign something out, you get it for 3 weeks. So I would anticipate that it would be the same process. Somebody could sign it out for 3 weeks, and then they'd be able to use it during that time frame. And we have an ongoing communication with the library. We obviously have a good relationship with them. So if anything needed to be adjusted on the fly, we could certainly do that.
Any other comments? Councillor Shortreed?
It'll be no different than checking out a book. You're checking out a pass. So they have X many pass, you check it out, you get it for X amount of time. We could put on it excludes fall colors, I don't know. And then when you check it back in, somebody else gets to use it. Simple.
Well, I think we're at the point where we would leave it in Chris's capable hands to come back with some recommendations on exactly how this might work. Having heard, some of the comments today, would council be satisfied with that? Go ahead.
Sorry, would you just repeat? I was in my own thought momentarily. Would you kindly repeat?
I was just saying that, based on the discussion that we've had, I think we need to look to Mr. Card to bring back some specific recommendations on how it would work and some numbers. Councillor Berry?
I support the initiative. I trust the library. I trust Chris. Like, I think this has come to us 2 or 3 times now, hasn't it? I don't.
No. This
No?
is the first time we've actually talked about it.
Okay,
It's been on the agenda.
okay, all right. $100.
How do we know that it's $100?
That was in the report.
Um, Are you saying that you disagree with asking staff to come back with a report with some specifics?
No, I'm
around it?
just saying, if we all support the initiative,
Well, we are saying that we support the initiative, but there are some questions about numbers and how they're used and how they're distributed and, you know, whether it would be based on a library card being presented or cards being developed and distributed by us. Like there are, you know, some things that just kind of need to be ironed out a little bit. Counselor, sorry, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
I think just given the threshold of money that's involved here, I would be very happy to support it, pass it, and then not ask for a report back, but just let staff under Angie's guidance, just, you know, figure it out with the library directors and voila.
I mean, the recommendation here is to, you know, sort of receive the report and ask staff to come back with some specifics. You're saying that's not required?
I personally do not feel that it's required.
Okay. I guess I would look to members of council to move and second receiving the report. And we will leave it in your hands. You might have to make some amendments to the recommendation. Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Could we receive the report and direct staff to make the appropriate arrangements with, make the appropriate arrangements and implement alongside Halliburton County Public Library and Lincoln Bay's Public Library, just so that they know they've got the go-ahead to just get her done?
Sure. That will require some further crafting of the resolution.
Just replace the word with develop to implement a passes.
Okay, do you want to read the resolution that you've got?
Be it resolved, council receives Park Recreation and Trails Report PRT 1426 regarding library patron passes for the Dorset Tower for information, and council directs staff to implement a pass system for library patrons in Lake of Bays Township and Halliburton County Public Library.
Mover to seconder. Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed. All in favor? It's carried. Next up for discussion is the draft parking philosophy.
Yes, thank you through you, Mayor. So council will certainly recall the discussions last year with our consultant and into this year leading up to further recommendations that were made at our last meeting. And the first step was to present to council a draft parking philosophy statement for consideration. In this report is outlined the various reports leading up to this. A number of the points that were discussed during that process with the consultant and presented at the March 5th meeting. And then what I'm recommending as a draft and looking for feedback and input on from council as a philosophy statement. I won't read that entire thing out unless the mayor you would like me to, but one thing I'd like to draw attention to for consideration is the opening sentence around the township being the Township of Algonquin Highlands is committed to providing equitable access to parking for ratepayers, visitors, and user groups. I do want to recognize that it is my intent that as we do our reviews this year and I bring recommendations back to council later in the year, we can then have more discussion about numbers of parking spaces per location. And it would still be the intent with this philosophy that as we approach each location, what we mean by equitable access could be location specific. And not necessarily that we're deciding on a specific number of parking spaces for each resident or visitor throughout the township, or we might want to end up there. We could go either way. I'm just bringing that up and certainly look forward to hearing council's opinions.
So the process would remain somewhat similar to what we have in place now when it comes to the improvement of a particularly area. You know, you would send out a survey seeking information. We would look at the, you know, the number of, say, residents on the lake and what would be required for land. You know, we still have to go through the process with the province about access to land.
Correct.
Which, you know, it continues to be a bit of a challenge. thought I read somewhere when I'm talking about equitable access, that, I think we need to be careful when it comes to water access only properties. Because there are some limitations there and some responsibilities on their part to provide their own storage and parking spaces. So, I mean, to me, that would be the only concern. Um, But, I like what's being proposed and recognize that you have to bring thoughts back to us again. So thoughts, comments, Councillor Shortreed?
I think since the survey started at each landing, it's given us a lot of information and it's really helped us direct how to go. And I think just having a bit more enforcement for the people who are using our docks as their private docking facilities all week, and then private parking all weekend, because it does happen. For example, Russell Landing, you can't launch a boat there. All you can do, like if you're gonna go to Dorset to go shopping, if you park your boat there, but your car shouldn't be there. So really, the only people who should be parking there are guests for visitors, visiting other people's cottages. So because you can't launch a boat there, you're not gonna get tourists dropping in to go fishing. It just doesn't make sense that the dock is full and the parking lot's full, when really the only people who can really use it are people going to visit somebody for a few days. So, I mean, that's just Russell Landing. Everywhere else pretty much has a boat launch and it's different, but I think the surveys will really, really help who's using it when, and then enforcement for people who are
So
using
those
it.
would be specific questions that we'd have to ask about
No,
who's
no.
using it and when.
I think that is in our survey, is it not? It's, no, it's they're on the survey, it is, the appropriate questions are there. I'm just saying that we need more enforcement for people who are abusing it.
Okay, so I mean, that would be
Yeah,
separate from the
100%,
parking
yeah,
philosophy that we're talking about, but
no,
it goes to the discussion that I had earlier about enforcement in some
Mm.
cases that needs to be stepped up in certain circumstances. Mr. Card.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor. So as we go through this process, currently what I'm doing is gathering data on how many vehicles are parked at each location. We're doing that during peak times, weekends and weekdays, and then off-peak times, weekend and weekdays. At the same time, I'm having discussions with bylaw. Once all of that information is gathered later on in the year, we'll be coming back with recommendations, and we may be at a point then to be able to start looking at some priority areas. The intent would be able to come up with 5 to 10 year priority levels. But it would be site specific. I think what we've learned in cases like Russell Landing, and you compare that to cases like Fletcher Lake or Skin Lake, the needs at each site seem to be very unique. So it's challenging to provide a blanket approach to every location. And certainly we'd still be reviewing that, but the hope would be that through the process that I'm going through this year, we can land on some bylaws that would help address some of the issues that align with as we develop parking at the same time.
Deputy Mayor, do you?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable, and I really like the draft philosophy. The one line that I didn't quite understand is the very last one. Public landing water access points will balance the needs of water access only properties, targeting minimum adequate parking for ratepayers and visitors on a site-specific basis. I wasn't entirely clear what was meant by that.
Go ahead.
If I may, through you, Mayor. So this is recognizing that our official plan does have in it that adequate docking and parking facilities must be secured on the mainland of the satisfaction of the township for the development of water access only properties. What we reviewed with our consultant is that can include some of our water access points, meaning that as water access only properties are developed, they are securing adequate public parking at access points, but it is in often cases our public access points. So my intention is to start out with, sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, hang on. It's my understanding that if you are developing a water access property, that you're responsible for ensuring that you have location for your own vehicles, not that we provide it. And there is some difference, I believe, between, existing water access only properties and newly, or since the bylaw was put in place, new properties. So if somebody's developing a new water access only property, we're not, according to our existing bylaws, responsible to provide them with parking. So we need to be clear about that.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, just a little bit further clarification is that it's when a property is being severed. So.
Which would mean that they're developing a new property.
Yes, but you could develop, meaning you could build on a property that exists. That's different than if we're severing a new property. So any creation of new lots requires what you're describing. Yes.
So we just need to keep that in mind when, when we're working on the philosophy. And I'm hearing, when we look at the recommendation, we're receiving your report and directing that you implement the philosophy. But I kind of heard from you that you're still kind of conducting some work and some study, and that you're going to bring, some further information back to us that would possibly change what you've identified here.
Sure, yes. So it wouldn't change what the philosophy is. What I'm referring to is that when we're talking about decisions on number of parking spaces at each location and how bylaws relate, and when we're thinking about how we might permit parking, where we've discussed in locations like the Hawks, there's the possibility of a permitting system for residents and then day users, and how we differentiate between those. Those are the bits and pieces that I'd like to figure out through the research that we're doing this year. Essentially, this statement would continue to align with the idea that following that, we're still dealing with parking on a case-by-case basis as projects come up. But that would help us to identify some priority areas and how we work within this framework within those priority areas, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can see that there's some pretty serious differences depending on the location. I mean, you're aware of a conversation that I had with one property owner yesterday about a specific lake, and he literally said that, like, we can't park our vehicles here, like it's not safe to park our vehicles here. So, I mean, those are the sorts of things that we need to take into consideration. Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm still a little unclear about that final line, and I wonder if there's any refinement we can do to the language to make it clear.
So thank you through you, Mayor. My intention with that line would be that I think in some instances we do need to determine whether or not we're going to allow a certain amount of spaces for water access only properties. I think we're going to get into that potentially with the Hawks if we do end up wanting to build a parking lot or develop a parking space on Crown land. We need to figure out how many spaces we want to provide. To do that, I would look at, or I would suggest that we look at starting out with how many water access only properties do we have? How many people are parking? How many spaces do we want to provide to those water access only properties? And then how do we separate that from day users, and how many spaces do we want to create for day users? So in this instance, that type of statement would mean balancing the needs of water access only properties by understanding that there's situations that there is water access only properties who are parking in these lots, and we need to figure out how many spaces we want to provide them as a minimum, and then targeting a minimum. That's what it means by targeting a minimum adequate parking for ratepayers, understanding that we would want to ensure that there's enough parking for them while we then balance visitors. So in the case of somewhere like the Hawks, we'd look at, let's just say, and I don't know that these are real numbers, I'm just saying them hypothetically. Let's say we needed 100 spaces for water access only properties, and we're deciding that based on if there's 100 properties, each one gets one space. And then on top of that, how many do we want to provide for day users? Because then this ties into bylaw enforcement. The bylaw officers need to know how they enforce those rules. Those rules we would create by first delineating how many parking spaces there's going to be.
Here's a question for you, and then we'll go to Deputy Mayor Dayu. was kind of my understanding that the philosophy that you're talking about here is coincides very well with the process that you've used whenever we're improving our docks and landings, which I've seen somewhat as being different from the project that's under Public Works umbrella for the Hawks. That, you know, we're talking about something that's kind of entirely different in a way. So are you including your philosophy for the Hawks as well, or for the Hawks and or the project that Mr. Thorne is working on along with yours? Or do you see them as being separate?
Included, yeah.
Deputy Mayor Dayu?
I understand what you said. That's great. I maybe would request that we tweak the language a bit to make that clear, because I do think that there are some folks for whom this is going to be the central line and they're going to want to really understand what it means. So if you would kindly.
Would you like that tweaking to come back?
Not necessarily. I mean, up to council, but I
But I
think
mean,
the-
it's
the
it's,
intention
you're
is
seeing that there's
to-
some nuances and things that, you know, levels of understanding that, you know, I'm thinking that there is some possibility that maybe it should come back.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no harm, because I don't think waiting for council to give their take on this is going to impede you from doing any work. You're still doing all of the work that you need to do. So sure, if it comes back, then that's fine. We're not stopping anyone from continuing their work.
Councillor Berry, did you have a comment? Okay, so at this point, like from my understanding from the conversation, that we receive the report and that we ask the policy to come back with some minor refinements before final approval. Can I have a mover and a seconder to that effect? Deputy Mayor Dayu? Councillor Berry?
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, Council receives Park Recreation Trails Report PRT 1926 regarding the parking philosophy statement for information. And finally, that Council directs staff to bring back a revised parking philosophy statement for final approval.
All in favor? That's carried. I hate to do this to you, Chris, but I think that we might maybe take a little 15-minute break before we get into the Fletcher Landing discussion, because it might take a little bit of time to talk about that. Welcome back to the open session. Next item on the agenda for discussion is the Fletcher Lake Landing, the design and options. Mr. Card.
Just waiting for the camera to sort out here, Mayor, sorry. Okay, thank you. So through you, Mayor. We're working on the Fletcher Lake Landing this year for a rehabilitation project on the retaining wall. And before council today for consideration are the recommended option for what we go forward with as far as the design goes. Council will recall after the questionnaire, I had put together some recommendations just around potential go forwards as to how we manage the retaining wall and the docking, with some of the key considerations outlined here. One of the items that was brought up during the questionnaire was a need for an additional mooring space. So the intent of the project is to replace the failing retaining wall. At the same time, we of course assessed parking and any other issues at the area through the questionnaire. So all of the design options presented still address the turnaround area for vehicles with trailer, still address improvements to the parking area and signage. The differences in costing really come down to how we address the retaining wall along with docking. I wanted to look at the possibility of, rather than reinstalling an entire concrete retaining wall, to going with a smaller retaining wall structure and a dock, which would allow mooring for 2 boats. We wanted to analyze the cost of those 2 different options to see which one was the more cost-effective solution, and that's what council sees before them today in the summary of Class D cost estimates. Now, I want to highlight Class D cost estimates are high-level estimates. Of course, we won't know final cost until we actually go through the tender process, but this will advise on the next step as far as design work goes. Our budget for this project is $381,000. On top of the options between a retaining wall of 2 mooring spots compared to a dock on a smaller retaining wall, we also wanted to look at the possibility of moving the boat launch altogether. Because we saw some opportunity there on site. However, we, as you can see with the third option, which is listed as option B1 on their summary of cost estimates, is a far higher cost than any of the other 2 options. So my recommendation is to go forward with option 1, which would be to take the retaining wall and replace it with something very similar, if not identical, to what we did at Skin Lake, which is the $382,725 estimate there. I've also included, just in the event that if council wants further clarification on what it is that we're talking about as far as location and work, the current general existing conditions site plan, which I'm happy to go over if we want to get into more detail about that.
Thank you. Looking for comments from council. Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Thanks, Chris. So just in a word, how closely does the recommended option marry up with the survey results? Is it, would you say it's the closest match or not quite there, or?
This achieves and sorry, through you, Mayor, this achieves exactly what we're looking to achieve through the survey results, which 2 of the items were an extra mooring space and better navigability at the entrance to the boat launch, because there's some rocks and there's some shallow areas. So along the retaining wall, this will get them on a dock out from that kind of shallow area into deeper water. But it will change the look of the site and it will change how they use the site. Rather than putting a boat up against the retaining wall, they're using the dock. Again, this has worked successfully in other locations, but it's meeting the needs of what we found out through the questionnaire. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, that was an easy discussion. So I guess I'm looking for a mover and a seconder to receive the report and go with option 1. Councilor Berry, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Counselor Berry, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council receives Park Recreation and Trails Report, PRT 2026, regarding Fletcher Lake Landing design options, costing for information, and that Council directs staff to proceed with option A1 as outlined in the report.
All in favor? That's carried. So finally, your monthly activity report.
Yes, thank you through you, Mayor. Just a couple of things I would like to highlight. One is that our request letter for engagement for the Indigenous Garden at the Tapscott Lopez Park has gone out to all of the nations, and we are starting to receive some response from them, which is fantastic. For the log chute, we've finalized our design and tender for the replacement work on the log chute, and we'll be looking to move forward with the actual tendering process for that.
And how does that tie in with Parks Canada?
We will have to ensure that any construction timelines is communicated to them and is in conjunction with their approvals.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. I have been in discussion with the MNR about Crown Lake Landing and camping there. We're planning on doing a cleanup, our staff in conjunction with MNR staff at that location on Monday. And they do plan to install no camping signage at the boat launch area immediately around the boat launch. This will not affect areas further away from the boat launch, but at the boat launch area. And finally, just to highlight the Dorset Recreation Center usage. So the June total of 1,328 over 1,155 of the same time period last year. These are the highest numbers we've seen at the Dorset Recreation Center, and it continues to increase year over year, month over month. We anticipate that this month and August will be potentially our highest use months that we have on record. So good to see, but something to consider going forward as well.
Good to see the increased revenues. It's obviously as a result of good work of your department. And thank you very much for your quick response to the concerns raised about Crown Lake yesterday. Just one other little piece of information about that is that from the discussions that I had with Chris, it sounds like the province will be putting in washroom facilities there. Probably not this year, but at least for the next season, that will be in place, because that's one of the major concerns that we've heard. Any questions on the monthly activity report? Councillor Shortreed.
Not a question, but again, the usage for Dorset Rec Center, after all the time and effort you put into it, it's so good to see that so many people are using it. It's amazing.
Thank you. Also, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the activity report? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Counselor Shortreed, seconded by Counselor Richards. Be it resolved, Council receives Park Recreation and Trails Report, PRT 2126, regarding monthly activities for the month of June for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Mayor. Take care, Council.
Next up is the Environmental Services Activity Report. Good morning, Ms. Murray.
Morning, Mayor and Council. Just a couple of points of note. Lots of sort of seasonal maintenance going on in June, and my thanks to the Public Works Department. They did a great job in cleaning up some of the active landfilling areas, which is wonderful. A note that the new lime green landfill cards went out in tax bills on June 17th. For anyone who received e-billing, they went out on July 3rd. So most people should have received those by now. And in this interim period, we're accepting both the new lime green cards and as well the pink cards that folks were using last year. So if anyone out there is asking questions, both of those are accepted without any problem for the summer, right up until September. So Just a couple of reminders. August 8th is the Household Hazardous Waste Day at the Oxtongue site. So that's coming up before our next council meeting. And then August 29th in Dorset. And I've had a couple of queries about activity at the Maple Lake site. And so just a note to council that Fridays are very, very busy when the site opens at 10 o'clock. So if that is a concern, I suggest wait a little bit longer. That does get less busy during the day there.
Councillor Barry.
I have received a couple of emails in regards to the checking, entering the landfill, and then the monitoring at the recycling landfill waste area. And is it necessary to have the two checkpoints? As people are saying, it's taking 20 minutes to half an hour to get into the landfill.
Through you, Mayor, the check at the gate is to ensure that prohibited materials aren't coming into the site, which is important. Obviously, we're responsible for any materials that come into the site, so that tenant at the entrance is checking that. At the bin area where we collect recycling and household garbage, the attendant there is helping to facilitate with education and sorting of the materials, particularly for recycling, because there are changes with the new program. So trying to provide that education. So there are different roles in the two different places because of that. And as well at the gate, they're checking if there's any chargeable materials to ensure that people get directed over to the scale at Maple. In Dorset, they're checking if, that's where they do any fees and assessments of loads there. So.
I had having gone there myself, I had the impression that, on the upper level at, at the landfill off North Shore Road, that they're kind of there to help as well. Yeah, I haven't, mind you, maybe they don't ask me too many questions because they know who I am. I'm not sure.
If I may,
Go ahead.
Delays, 20-minute, half an hour, that would be waiting, Friday morning when the site opens. That isn't unusual, that there might be a 20 or 30-minute wait to get through, but that's a long line of cars, and the attendants, they're trying to move things along as quickly as possible. When there's opportunities, sometimes another attendant will come and assist at the gate with that. But we do try, keep an eye on that. But I again caution that if you are worried about having to wait in line, Friday morning is not the best time to be there. And that's been consistent. That's at all sites across the board, and it has been, that's pretty standard practice during the busy season.
So Councillor Barry and myself were both at the recent Maple Beach Cameron AGM, and there was a report about the new cards and the QR code and the purpose behind that, and also let people know that if you haven't received yet or got your new card in your car, that your pink card will still work, and there were no concerns raised. I think it was made clear that the QR aspect of it was more for our purposes than for the public's purposes, but not to be too concerned about it creating more IT requirements for people who are not comfortable with that. So it was well received. Any questions or comments on the report? Hearing none, if I could have a mover and a seconder then to receive the report for June. Deputy Mayor Dayu. Councillor Barry.
By Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, Council receives environmental report EB 1626 regarding June monthly activities for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next up is Public Works. Morning, Mr. Thorne.
Morning, Mayor and Council.
The first item under Public Works are the Airport Committee meeting updates from June 11th and the 24th. If I could have a mover and a seconder to receive those. Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Barry.
by Counselor Shortreed, second by Counselor Barry. Be it resolved that the June 11th and June 24th, 2026 Airport Committee meeting minutes be received for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the discussion on airport development proposals.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor. At the last meeting that we spoke about this and at the April council meeting, we talked about having the company come in and they were going to take a look at the business plan and bring forward some options, and some costing was associated to that. So it was accepted that we take this back and let staff look into it a little bit further and bring something forward, and that's what I have here in front of us. It's a little bit to follow, so please at any time, just make sure you let me know, because there's a lot here. But essentially what I've done is I've allocated out 3 locations within the airport property that we can develop.
So
One,
if we could, Adam, as you deal with each particular location, if we could then, stop at each
Certainly.
one and have a discussion about that, so it's, kind of clear. We're not
of course.
hearing the whole thing and then going, what did he just say?
Of course, no problem. So we'll start with location 1, and council should be familiar with location 1, as it's part of the business development area that is located just above the airport, past the MNRF property. It's that pie shape that has 10 properties on it, 10 lots, I should say. So the idea behind that is that what I'm proposing here is that we engage in a commercial real estate agent, and that we have them come out and look at the property, and they sell it for us or lease it, whichever council should choose. But I think that's the best way to get it out there. The land is developed in such a way, we have all the plans for it, the kind of the ideas that council had put forward for it. It's, I think, pretty straightforward. Part of location 1 is also staff is recommending that we have the company come back out that did the original appraisal on it and just give us an update on it, plus the location on the corner of North Shore and Green Lake. Just add that into it so that we know pretty much what the property is going to be worth from the appraisals standpoint. That also gives us the ability to compare that to a real estate agent that comes forward and has offers up what they think it should be worth as well. Gives us a comparison. I think that'll help us.
From my perspective, I mean, I'm just glad to see some activity go forward, and an activity that will ultimately result in some revenue coming in. I mean, to me, those particular lots in that area are somewhere where we can see, development, increased taxation, opportunities for job creation. There's all kinds of opportunities there. So I recognize that the value that was, I mean, the appraisals that we had previously were some time ago and are not necessarily relevant now, whether the properties are worth more or less. We need to find that out.
That's correct.
One of the things that I had questioned Adam about was the value of having a real estate agent market and sell these properties for us, because I thought, well, you know what, we've sold our own properties before, advertised and sold them. And why would we be paying a fee to a real estate agent to sell properties for us? But he pointed out, and I thought it was an excellent point, real estate agents want to make as much money as they possibly can on a property, as far as, their percentage of the take. And, if they want, the more that they can get for a property, the more that revenue we can make. Councillor Barry.
One question I have is if we're not going to be in the place of selling in the next 6 months, year, would it make sense to just get information from a realtor first and do an assessment after the fact? I know it's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg, but I do understand that the assessments are pretty time sensitive. So I don't know if there would be, and a realtor is not going to charge us, where an assessment, there's a fee associated to that. So I just wondered if it would be better if I'm not saying don't do an assessment, but would it be better to do it later opposed to now if we're not going to be moving forward right away?
One comment I would make about that is that we've been waiting a long time to get some of this moving. And I don't want to, sort of rejig the direction. that would cause a considerable delay. And it would be my assumption that, you know, if whatever cost for appraisals is, you know, that we have to bear would be included in the sale price.
So through you, Mayor, essentially, I think we're all familiar with the sale of our home or a home. And when you do an MVA, market value assessment, what happens is the real estate agent essentially, they want your business. So they'll come in and they'll do an MVA for nothing because they're, you know, hopefully expecting to get that. What we're looking at is an appraisal of 11 lots. I would be uncomfortable just getting one real estate agent to come in and do an appraisal on, or an MVA on 11 lots. I would want at least 3 or 4 agents to come in and do that for us so that we were getting at a good value for those lots. I think that if we were to do the appraisal first and we have a set number that we're comfortable with, then if we go out with what staff is recommending here is to reach out to a couple different real estate agents or companies and asking them to give us a bit of a proposal on how they're going to market it, how they're going to sell it, what their game plan is, what their commission is, and they'll base it on the appraisal that we have been given by a professional company. I like your idea of trying to go to a real estate agent first. Like I said, if it was one property, I think it would be a benefit. With it being 11, I think it's a benefit to get the appraisal done first.
Madam CEO.
Through you, Mayor, yes, and just a gentle reminder to council as well that we do have a sale of land policy that requires us to get an appraisal.
I'm sorry,
It
requires.
requires us to get an appraisal.
Okay. Well, that kind of answers that question. Sorry, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
So one of the things that gave us pause the last time we really took a look at this was the cost of bringing water, sanitation, hydro, etc. There's also the question of the road that would have to be created to the back 3 lots. And I just wonder, how does that fit in? Because you wouldn't be expecting presumably each individual new property owner to individually negotiate bringing, you know, a
Power.
well in and hydro in. And what would they do? What would the back 3 lots do in terms of managing that new road, or would that be a municipal road? Basically, how does it just feels more complicated than selling a lot, an empty lot.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. My experience with it and the way I see us moving forward with this, with council's permission, obviously, would be that we just sell them as a lot. And that it's up to the buyer to provide their own hydro, just as if you were to purchase a lot off one of our roads. You have to engage hydro, you have to bring the power to your location, and a well would have to be done by yourself, and a septic system would also have to be put in by the property owner. One of the biggest hurdles that we have, and we've talked about this, I think, in depth, is that we don't know what power is required. 3-phase runs to the M&R building, and any discussion I've had with hydro, without being able to provide the a power amount that we feel is going to be used, they can't give us a quote. I think the original quote, Angie, you can correct me on this, but I think it was like between 1 and 1.5 million. Because they had no idea what we were going to be asking for, and we couldn't give them numbers for it. They also suggested that they may have to pull power from a completely different network, which is amazing to me because like I don't understand how the hydro works in the sense of where it comes from. You know, Minden, Halliburton, Dorset. It's actually kind of a neat grid system, but that's what I would propose. I think one of the biggest hangups for us as a township with the development of this is the things like hydro, water, sewer. What are we going to allow to be developed? And I think what this does is it makes that more efficient for us to just sell the property and let our bylaws and building code and things of that nature take its course when somebody wants to develop it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we can at least see what kind of response we get, you know, at least we'll have a value that we can move forward with, see what kind of reaction we get. I know that there is some interest, and, you know, I'm hearing from the committee that there's interest in development in the area. So, this gives us an opportunity to find out, sort of what level of interest you have. Go ahead, Adam, sorry.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. And sorry, I did miss a question that you had asked about the back lots. It would be my proposal that we develop everything out front first and we sell those first. So although we have 11 lots between this property here and the one on the corner, it would be my guess or my suggestion that we sell everything except for the ones that don't have roads to them. So that as the sale of each property comes in, we can utilize those funds to help build those sections. I wouldn't want to build them first because I hope we sell every lot within a year. But if we don't, I would hate to develop that on the ratepayer and then we have to sit and wait until somebody wants the 3 lots in the back. So that would be my plan.
So to your question about the road, it would be my understanding that it would be a municipal road, our responsibility, as opposed to part of the buyers. Any other question about that portion of the proposal? The only thing the question that I would have with respect to the corner lots, the way this is being depicted on the agenda, to me, is not the way it would be subdivided.
So you're talking about location number 2, which is the corner lot on Green Lake and North Shore,
Yeah.
or sorry, Green
Yeah.
Lake and Stanhope Airport Road.
So, I mean, I kind of had envisioned that we would, sort of sever off a rectangular lot that cornered on the 2 roads, and that, where the Quonset hut and access to the Quonset hut and onto the runway would be separate with sufficient development space for that.
Yes, so through you, Mayor, so when I spoke with the planning, Sean, when he was here, that was my idea too. Ideally, I wanted to actually try to do 3 lots in that area, just to try and get more for us, right? And develop more. Unfortunately, due to the size, there is a requirement for a lot size that you're allowed to sever. So I've just divided this in 2, but if council does approve to move forward with this, then the minimum size lot that we are allowed to sever off would be what we could look for. But when I spoke with Sean about this was pretty much what it looked like for the size that we would be allowed to do.
But the way it's pictured here, doesn't, to me, it doesn't compute at all, because you've got the sort of what's a purple section and then a red section as a separate lot, but the red section doesn't look like it's got access to the airport road.
That is correct. The red section would not have airport, access to airport road, not through the original access point. I can develop this further and look into it more. If it's required to have access from, then we would be able to look at either creating a new road, like I don't want to call it a road, a laneway from the airport property to North Shore Road. We can certainly do that. Or if that purple area that you're seeing there, we can actually back it back a little bit. So for the purposes of this, if it cut through half of the Quonset hut and that section could still stay the township, and we can have a road go through there over to the existing entrance, then I could certainly look into that to make sure that we do have access. So I think to answer the question that you're asking is that where that area is, location 2, is to take a look at what the minimum size property we can sever off and keep the rest for the airport.
Yeah, okay, I just envisioned that the access off Airport Road, the Quonset hut, and the access to the runway, taxiway to the runway would all be part of one parcel.
Through you, Mayor, I'll look into that to see if that we can keep that as part of the airport and then sever the other side of that off.
Because I mean, I'm thinking that ultimately they would both be sold, but one would be sold has access to the runway. That's, yet to be determined, but yeah, I mean, I would look for a little bit clearer sketch on, how you see the property being divided, because it just kind of doesn't compute to me the way it's laid out.
Certainly, and I can bring that back for further clarity.
Questions about that? And I'm really, I'm really looking forward to us, moving forward, getting a bit of revenue generated, and some development opportunities taking place. Okay, so Business Park B.
So the next location, through your mayor, the next location is location number 3. So the business park A and B just show the different,
Oh, okay.
the lot, and then what the original plan was and what that would look like as far as structures and things of that nature.
I guess I should have been talking about the last option,
Which is 3,
Business Park 2,
yes.
if you want to address that.
Yes, thank you, through your mayor. So location 3, which is business park number 2, is located behind the existing hangars that are currently on the property there. The previous work that was done in 2015, when the airport was further developed, flattened out an area there, and it's prime real estate for the airport to potentially build potentially 3 structures, depending on the size that the council would like to go with, but essentially it could build approximately.
I'm glad it's Sim, not me, for change.
Sorry, it's an emergency. When the kids call. My apologies. I even shut the pager off too, just so it wouldn't go off this time. My apologies. So again, it would allow us to have 3 properties essentially. It's one property, so it'll always be one property, but it'll have 3 sections within it that we would be able to lease. These wouldn't be for sale. These would be for us to lease out to potential businesses. How that looks moving forward as far as a lease plan, like we build the building and then we lease it out, an agreement to enter into an agreement with a contractor to build for them, or they build it. There's lots of options out there. And we've looked at other airports that have done a couple different scenarios that could potentially work for us. But the idea is that we would further develop that area to create a business location within what we currently have.
So that area wouldn't require survey.
It wouldn't require a survey in the sense of like property lines. It would require us to have an engineer come in and lay out the entire property in that section to show council what it would look like. So we would be able to determine the proper size of buildings, the proper size of where the septic system would go, where the water system would go, where the parking and things of that nature would go.
So one question, I'm sorry, I've been kind of going back
That's
and
okay.
forth between the sketches and sort of the timeline that you're proposing. What was the timeline that you were proposing for that portion of the work?
So this would have been in 2027.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, because personally, I mean, I'm not sure what the rest of council thinks, but to me, I think we need to move forward and ensure that the existing hangars are operable, that we get the roofs repaired.
Of course.
And, if we're going to go ahead with the sale of properties and some subdivision of the corner lot, that's optimum for this year. But for, I would sort of see these 3 opportunities being something that we would do or look at next year, and we could start working on it or getting it laid out. Getting some more details that would fit into whatever your budget submission is going to be for next year. Thoughts from council on the timing of that? Councillor Shortreed.
Oh, I agree 100%. And then if we have money left from the sale of lots, we can put towards developing that.
Well, it is an excellent opportunity for, for businesses to be located at the airport, which also comes with jobs and, possible, new houses being built, maybe. Any other questions about that aspect of it? Sorry, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
I like it. I really do. I like the idea of, let's get some lots going. Let's get that income coming in and provide some opportunities for folks who are, hopefully ready to go with a lots like that, which also buys us some time to think about, lease opportunities for that other place. Who might it be? How could it be developed? But in the meanwhile, and I know this has been what you proposed for the last little bit, but you know, in the meanwhile, we're moving. I really like it.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mary, I think the struggle, and it's understandable, is obviously the cost of it. If money wasn't an issue, we'd already be past this point, I think. But knowing where we are in the world and what's coming up and the uncertainties, it is a hard decision to make for council. And I should say, I appreciate all of your thoughts and effort that council's put into this. Selling off the lots is a huge portion to this, because if the lots don't sell, then there's obviously no point in
It's
really
delaying further activity.
but at least you know, but at
Mhm.
least you know that there's no development out there currently that wants to come to the area. And I think by going back to getting a real estate agent involved with this, they'll have the connections, they'll have the push, they'll have the desire to, get at this a lot more than, please don't take it that staff don't have the desire, but we wear many hats, and real estate is definitely not our profession. So I think it'll work out really well for us, one way or another.
I do anticipate that because the information is there on the committee personnel summary, and I think we've all seen that on a previous agenda. But I know that they're really excited about seeing development take place at the airport, and will do everything in their power to encourage anybody who's showed any interest to them to say like, hey, here's who you need to get a hold of, and they're keen. Councillor Short-Reed.
Are you going to engage a commercial real estate agent?
Yes, through you, Mayor, sorry. Yes, my plan is to reach out to quite a few of the local real estate agents and ask for a commercial real estate agent to be involved, yes. And I would like to see them, I have a handful of questions essentially that I'm going to be asking them to bring forward their information, and then we can go through it from there, because I want the best one for us. I want the one that's going to fight for us.
And I found selling my property recently that it doesn't matter where the selling agent is, because anyone can show it. It's who's selling it, what access they have to the community that we want to get it to. That's a
Certainly.
huge factor.
Good point. Any other questions on what we've heard so far? Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Do we have any ability to provide guide rails or to these sales? And what I mean by that is, what if someone came along and said, okay, I want to buy, and getting back to the first option again, I want to buy all 10 lots. I'm going to put a big data center warehouse there. But
Getting us to agree to that.
well, but like what
Oh,
maybe I should be looking
No,
at.
your point is well taken.
Yeah, it's because I think it is more of a planning question, but how do we manage those unlikely possibilities?
Councillor Richards.
I do strongly recommend that the future council looks at a framework for approving data centers within maybe our official plan or something. There's a lot of that going on out there. Maybe the province is going to step in soon. But I think for the most part, our existing official plan is already there to facilitate this outside of data centers, right?
It's a good point. I'm sorry. CAO.
Through you, Mayor, it would definitely be, if there was a specific use proposed, that isn't contained within the zoning bylaw for that property, it would require a zoning bylaw amendment that council would need to approve, and would require public input, that sort of thing.
What I had envisioned myself is that they would be sold as individual lots for light industrial, commercial types of properties. I would hope that there might be some opportunity for, for instance, I think that our zoning bylaw allows for, if you have a business on a property, that you can have a complementary housing attached to it. I believe, I could be wrong about that, but you know, I'm kind of hoping that there might be that kind of development so that we're seeing housing opportunities as well as business opportunities. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's very much my hope too, but then someone might come around and say, hey, I'll give you X amount for five lots in a row, and then all of a sudden, we're in a whole different world. So, but that is certainly my hope.
As is ours, and as our CAO has said, like if somebody came along with something that's contrary to what we had envisioned, that would come to us, and we would have to consider whether it's something that we could support or not. You know, like data center was like an excellent example, because there's so much involved in something like that, and you know, environmental concerns, and Councillor Richards can tell you stories about data centers. Any other questions on what we've dealt with so far? So that moves us on to, or no, maybe that's a separate report. What have we got for a resolution for so far?
Okay, so be it resolved, council receives Public Works Report, PW 1926, Staff Airport Development Proposal 26-1 for information, and council directs staff to proceed with next steps contained in the report, with step 1 being professional appraisal of 11 identified lots at an upset limit of $6,000. Council directs staff to engage a commercial real estate firm to submit proposal outlining and marketing strategy for the sale of lots, and that council directs staff to bring back additional information and revised sketch for the corner lot for review by council, and and further that council hereby authorizes the CAO to sign any required agreements or documents related to the proposal.
Is that in line with what you've like to
Yep.
see going forward? Okay,
works for me.
mover and a seconder. Councillor Richards and Councillor Barry, all in favor? That's carried. Exciting stuff. Okay, on to Hangar D,
More exciting stuff.
which at some point will possibly have a different name than Hangar D.
Well, that's coming. Okay, thank you. Again, through you, Mayor. So Hangar D has been another one that's been on the docket for a little while here. And we have certainly looked through the building. We've had engineers come out to it, take a look at it, contractors, things of that nature. And we did put out the expression of interest. The first one, we didn't get anything. The second one, we did get somebody to come back, and they were very interested in it. Now, they have a bit of a future plan for their business where Hangar D is not quite big enough, I think, for them.
What?
So with Hangar D, yeah, it is a perfect size for them to get started, but they would be looking at potentially growing, hopefully. And that's kind of, you know, the idea for us is that we get businesses in that want to grow with us. But for the purpose of Hangar D is that we are at a crossroad here where we need to decide, I think, whether or not we add more to Hangar D or we just take it back to what it was originally. In order to have a successful, thriving business opportunity at the Stanhope Airport, I believe that we need to have a bathroom in it and have some water running to it. We've put in some large projects over the years to increase security, policies that, you know, don't allow people to drive on the runway and on the taxiways, things of that nature. So if we were to turn it back into a commercial hangar for businesses, then there's some extra work that should be done to it to secure the area. But on the flip side, if that's not a feasible option, then council can decide for us to just take it back to a regular hangar like it was and not lease it out to commercial and just lease it, sorry, to a commercial business and just lease it out to somebody that wants to use it as a regular hangar, or multiple people could use it as a regular hangar essentially.
But if I'm not mistaken, there has been a business that has operated out of that hangar in the past. So, you know, it wouldn't necessarily have to be just, you know, storage. You know, that there's still opportunity there. And, you know, I think if we have interested parties, that if we suggested to them, look, you know, we're going to bring the hangar back to its original state, and look at doing servicing in a like say next year, so that we can, you know, it's more affordable for us to go forward. that, you know, there might be interest, or, you know, that somebody can see that, oh, okay, you know, I mean, I can use the building now, it's going to improve, my business will improve. I think it, you know, is possibly more affordable for us to do it in 2 stages. Let's get it back to its normal state, get it bringing in revenue. Um, Hopefully, you know, we can continue to deal with the legal issue that's attached to that, and that's a separate issue, but maybe move forward with the servicing like septic and water next year.
So through Mayor, the challenge with some of the turning it into a hangar that a business can work out of, although there was a business there before, yes, there was a lot of challenges with it. And that is a lot to do with the public coming into the airport. Right now, if the public wants to come to this business, they have to come through the gate, our security gate. They have to come through and they have to drive over the taxiway to get to that business. And that is a huge issue now that we've addressed, and we no longer allow that. So if it was just the owner or of the business coming in, that's a little bit different. But now if the public is coming in, that creates a whole new issue. That's something that we addressed over the last couple of years with our lease hangar tenants, that people were driving all over the place. And that was causing some huge concerns, which did end up going to Transport Canada. So we've addressed those, and that's no longer happening. When it comes to the septic system, it's more than just putting in a septic system because of the lack of room that's there. We could put in a holding tank. I spoke with the building about this. We could put a holding tank in temporary, but that sewage has to be pumped away. So we'd have to pump it from the hangar all the way over to basically where I'm proposing the business park behind the existing hangars. So there's an expense to that. Drilling a well is another expense, plus securing the area. If that's a business that has people coming to it, we need to provide some kind of security for them, for parking, if they have staff that are coming in, a walkway, things of that nature, because right now none of that is available to them. That's a huge concern and hurdle that we would need to get over. Plus the cost of it. Doing the work that we potentially need to do to have a business run out of there, we're not really going to get much more in revenue than if it was just turned back to a regular hangar that a business could potentially lease as a storage unit or as a thing to, you know, they bring their planes to and they store them there, or they do a little bit of work in there, sure. But we'd have to really regulate how much public comes through it, basically.
Is there a way for us to deal with ensuring that, you know, the security and access is dealt with separately from, you know, say, water and sewer work that might need to be done? Like, you know, I just want to get I mean, obviously, we want to get the building put into use and making some revenue, whether it's as a commercial development or a hangar. But, you know, I hear your concerns about access and, you know, the public coming into the airport. Is there a way to separate those two?
Through you, Mayor, I think at the end of the day, what you're going to get for revenue, whether it's a business that has staff working out of it and the public coming to it versus it just being a hangar that someone can lease or a business could lease for storage is irrelevant. I don't think there's going to be much of a difference between the two. My recommendation would be that we turn it back to what it was. And if a business wants to use it, then we limit the access that they have to it to their staff only and no public, just because of the security issues that we got rid of.
For now, with the understanding
For
that
now.
there's a possibility of
Certainly.
expanding its capabilities.
Well, and then to take that one step further, if this person or this business is going really well, and we obviously are in good conversation with them, we can talk about further development of a hangar in that new location we spoke about, where we could, you know, enter an agreement with them, a contract very similar to M&R, where we build a building and let them lease it from us for X amount of years. A building of their, you know, size and design that works for them, or they build it, and like there's lots of possibilities there. I would hate to. I know we want to get that building up and running, and I think we can do that fairly efficiently. I would hate to put in all that extra stuff, the security, the septic, the well, and we're not gonna get, if it was an extra $5,000 a month, if we did that, I'd be all over it. But you're not gonna get that.
Well, I mean, for me, the first step is to get the building back to its original condition and operating, offering some service to someone. Questions, Deputy Mayor Dayu, sorry.
I think I've already heard the answer to this slipping through your
Mhm.
previous answers, but how practical could it be to sever Hangar D and sell as is?
Through you, Mayor, just so I understand, are you referring to like severing it off and selling it to the public?
Yes.
I would have to leave that to our CIO. That's a good question. I mean, it's within our property. I don't even know how that would.
It might be a bit of a challenge, but we'll hear what the CAO's got to say.
Through you, Mayor, yes, and I'll put planner hat on. It would be virtually landlocked, so you couldn't do it. You need access to Airport Road.
Go ahead, Adam.
Through you, Mayor, I think also to help with that is we look at M&R as almost like their own property. And then we look at the airport as its own property, and then we look at the development area as its own property, and then we have that road where, yes, it is a road, we travel on it, but it's not a road. It's within the airport property. And I think that kind of clouds thinking that we may be able to sever it off so they would have access to it. It's a really good question and it's a good idea. But like our CIO said, yeah, they would essentially be landlocked.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, you're on my.
Blindside, no, I understand. So another question along the same spirit. Have you run the numbers on what it would cost to simply remove the building and put something else there that that is useful for us or that doesn't cost us anything against the numbers of anticipated revenue for even the cheaper of these two options? Because if we're looking at multi-decades of getting a return on investment for even the cheaper option, I wonder if it's in the best interest of the taxpayer to do that or to cut our losses and do something else with that space.
Through you, Mayor, that's an interesting question. To be
It's a
completely
very
honest,
challenging question, too. Let's get some
certainly.
legal implications.
Through you, Mayor, no. To answer that question simply, no. The desire from council has always been to get Hangar D back up and running, one faction or another. What could go in there? It has never been a thought because we've always had the development land. We've always had the land behind the hangar, and we've always had the corner property where if we wanted to look at I'm just going to throw out an idea of like a solar farm as an example, where we can collect solar to run our whole airport. We have the areas to do that. I would never, you've got me thinking for sure. But the desire has always been to put it back to a hangar. We've looked at repairs versus getting rid of the hangar and building a new one. We've looked at all kinds of different ideas of how we can retrofit the building. At the end of the day, the framework is still good and we could still utilize that to save money. So to simply answer your question, no, I have not, but you've got me thinking now.
And there are parties who are interested in it just being refurbished in its natural state or its original state and moving forward with it. I think that there are some aspects of what you're asking that need to be discussed in a closed session. Okay, so with respect to Hangar D and I guess the final piece for me is how we're proposing financing. Because I do have a little bit of a problem. We'd already made a decision about use of the funding, part of the budget for airport development and that amount of money. And I think you're suggesting that we use that to repay that, but we've already made a decision about how that fund's going to be used. And we also need to be very cognizant of the fact that because we use so much of our reserves in the budget, that we need to start looking at sort of building that fund back up again. So I guess I'd like to hear your thoughts and options on financing and then hear what council's got to say about that.
Okay, through you, Mayor. So essentially, we have the reserve in the airport to get started on the projects. But we obviously are gonna have to look at an additional funding to help offset one of them. We can start one and finish it and start the other, but we have to have some sort of external funding essentially to pay for both of them. That being the replacement of Hangar D, the refurbish of it, and the roof repair on the other 4 hangars. Our previous treasurer brought forward a document that showed loans and what the loan rate would be and what our repayment would be. And that's where I took some of these numbers from, saying that if we were to do a loan to cover the cost of both projects, the repayment amount would be covered by what we put into the reserve currently. That was a suggestion. I mean, if council chooses to pay the loan from another stream, then that's up to you. It's just, that was my thought process, to not put a huge burden on the taxpayer. And then when we sell lots, we would just put that money back into our reserve.
Angie and then Councillor Berry.
Thank you, through your mayor. I would like to suggest to council that if you're supportive of Adam's ideas, then perhaps he can discuss the financing with the treasurer and then bring a future
A
report
separate
back
financing report back.
with more detail.
Councillor Berry.
I'm not opposed to Counselor Dayu's consideration. I don't know the legal implications, but my issue is with the extensive work that has to be done on the other hangars in regard to the roofs. I can't see anything other than option 2 at this point. I also feel that some of the work that's needing to be done in regards to repairs and the roofs of the other hangars far, far, far exceeds any revenue that we will ever receive from these hangars. So I don't want to get too far into financing without realizing that the revenue is just not there.
Or,
The rental of any of the hangars.
well, for starters, I mean, we have rental agreements with the hangars and they are our infrastructure that is in place and we absolutely must replace the roofs, no question about it. And Hangar D is, I mean, there's options for, there's interest in it. It should be making some revenue. It's just another aspect of work that needs to be done. I mean, I do see holding off on any additional work. Like, I mean, let's just replace it as it was without septic, water, developing, fencing or, separate road accesses to it. But, I see us having to proceed with both the roofs and Hangar D. And well, let's see what the financing options are that are brought back to us. But, as far as which option we're going to choose with respect to Hangar D, I agree that it should be just like, let's bring it back to its normal state, as opposed to doing anything additional to it. Sorry, Councillor, Deputy Mayor Dayu, and then Councillor Richards.
Yeah, I agree. I think if anything, it would have to be option 2, not option 1. I don't think we can go down that road right now. I would love to see, though, if you do come back with the treasurer to provide a financing report, in addition to that and alongside it, the return on investment numbers, like how does it churn out? What would we have to lease it for in order for this to be a good idea? Because for any business, no business, including municipal business, is going to throw a huge sum of money at something for which we will only garner a tiny, tiny income in return. And I think before we say yes to option 2, it would be very good to see how those numbers do work out, including return on investment, because fully understanding that there are some legal considerations that have to be talked about, I would be curious to explore whether this financially is our best option, or thinking outside of the box, maybe doing something else with the space, given that it is going to cost $500,000 to bring it back up to minimum operation. That is a lot of money for a box.
it's also a facility that's been sitting there making absolutely no revenue for years.
I understand, yes.
And you know, I do have an issue with that. So okay, sorry, I'll go to Councillor Richards, and then I was saying, like, I'm definitely hearing that we'd like to see a financing plan. Councillor Richards.
Yeah, I definitely see going with option two. I thought we had put out an expression of interest for if there's anybody out there for option one, and it's my understanding nobody's really come forward that's interested. And it could be, you know, because it's in the middle of the property and not a lot of access, et cetera, but
I think that Adam might have a little bit of an
yeah.
update on that for you.
Just through you, Mayor, so we did put out the first one, the first expression of interest with nothing, and then we put a second one out. And right at the very end, we did get somebody come in with an expression of interest to take on Hangar D as it is, but they want to develop further in Stanhope Municipal Airport. They're currently working out of another airport. They have a hangar that they work out of that is much larger, and they've shared their lease rate with us. And it's not a lot. Like, I don't know what council was expecting for an annual or a monthly lease rate, but it certainly is almost double what we were getting for it back when it was operational. But lease rates on hangars are not as high as you would think a commercial building in town would be. In saying that, we do have somebody that is interested in it, and as soon as we can put it together, as of right now, they are willing to move into it. Again, once council decides which option we were going to go with, I would like to go back to them and give them the idea, or give them this information that we are going to renovate it, and give them the proposed dates to make sure that they're still wanting to be into it, so that we're not continuously looking for more people to come along. Because if this person's interested, then they went through the EOI, we would have them come in.
It's nice to hear that there's a thought that they would like to see, as well as using the hangar, that they would like to see further development at the airport. It's kind of exciting. Go ahead, sorry.
So is that option one that they're interested in, or option two?
Option two.
Okay. So maybe as part of that, coming back with the financing, we know what we could get for it in rent if they were interested in proceeding with that. But then also, I think there is an element that belongs in closed session that we kind of maybe need an update on.
So what I'm hearing right now is that we're leaning towards option two, and that we would like to have a financing report brought back to us that will help us in our final deliberations with respect to that. So we'll give our clerk a moment and then see what she's got for a resolution.
Be it resolved, council receives Public Works Report PW 2126, Hangar D and property development options for information, and council provides staff with direction on pursuing option two as identified in the said report, and council directs that a detailed financing plan be brought back to a future meeting for consideration.
So moved by Councillor Short-Reed, seconded by Councillor Richards. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir. For your information, I think we've seen this before. The details of the skills that our airport committee have got to offer, and how they can help in every possible way. You know, moving forward with trying to, you know, market the lots that we're trying to garner interest in, you know, aside from, I mean, obviously they would have to direct interested parties to, you know, whoever Adam makes arrangements with respect to real estate sales, but they're pretty keen. So I think that a piece on the agenda is simply there for council's information and receipt. Go ahead, Adam.
If I could just add that it has been a pleasure working with these gentlemen. They have been excellent to deal with. Lots of great ideas. Part of dealing with committees, as council knows, is that the ideas are just massive sometimes, and it's hard reining them in. But this group has been great to deal with. Like, their experience is is great. And they are very forthcoming with our knowledge of the airport and not being overbearing, which has been a pleasure to work with. So far it's been a great experience, and I think we've also seen that in the ability they have for our last quite a few events, our fly-ins. You know, that's run by them, although we oversee and make sure they stay within the guardrails of the airport and municipal workings. But they have done an amazing job, and they just keep pushing forward. So I think this is going to be a good opportunity, especially the development programs with them. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, they're going to be quite excited about this. And, you know, I think you can see from the summary that there's some pretty solid skills there. And they are a pleasure to work with. So if I could have a mover and a seconder, then just to receive the personnel summary for information, Councillors Shortreed and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council receives the airport committee personnel summary for information.
All in favor? That's carried. So finally, report on an accessible lift project.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So we did try to go out for, everybody's familiar with the Stanhope Firefighters Community Center and the entrance into it and the ramp on the side of it. We've been working on a plan over the last couple of years to try to make it more accessible. So what we've done is we did try to go out for a grant through that Barrier Buster grant program, and unfortunately we were unsuccessful with it. But through that, we were able to get pricing on what a lift would be to install in the building itself. So as we were unsuccessful, I would like to propose to council that we still have the lift installed. We did have the budget set aside for it. Council approved that in the 2026 budget deliberation. And I would like to go forward with this project utilizing the same company that installed the lift at our library and the one that they installed in the Dorset Recreation Center.
Councillor Berry.
I don't know if I've just had a mind blip or not, but is this for to actually get into the building, or is this to access downstairs?
Through your mayor, this is to access the main floor. So you'd
Yeah.
come in, I should say the second floor, if you will. But the main floor entrance is where the lift would be located, and then that would allow them to go up the 5 steps that's there onto the shuffleboard floor, if you will, the dance floor.
There's a lot of use of the building, and we do have an aging population, and you know, so that you can see that's where the location is proposed.
Is my understanding there is a ramp there? Is the ramp not accessible?
There's
Through you, Mayor. The concrete ramp is on the exterior of the building, and
Yeah.
it does not meet accessibility. Right now, we're looking at options of, and what sparked this too was that because of that ramp doesn't meet accessibility requirements, and the ramp is actually, it's decaying
Okay.
quite quickly. So either we rebuild the ramp to put in accessible access to the back of the building, or we put in the lift. And the lift, it just seems it's so much more feasible. It's indoors, it's less maintenance. And then when we go to rebuild the ramp, we can actually either decide to remove the ramp altogether or change it up a little bit so it's just a loading ramp, not an accessible ramp.
good.
Okay, so the ramp would be when you come inside where the coats are, that's where you would be having the lift opposed to off the ramp.
Through you, Mary, yes, that's
Okay,
correct. Yeah,
Okay,
in the front foyer.
thank you. Yes.
Sorry.
How much room would the ramp take up? The same, say, would it be the same size as the ramp that's at, say, Dorset?
Through you, Mayor, let's clarify, it's not a ramp, it's a
Sorry, the
lift.
lift.
So when the lift is in use, it will take up approximately 4 feet going up and down the stairs. When it's not in use, it just stores out of the way. So it takes up about a foot. And that whole front entrance there, don't quote me on this, I think it's like 16 feet wide.
Okay. Any other, sorry, Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Yes.
That's not a question. Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then to move forward with the lift? I'm hearing Deputy Mayor Dayu and Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Counselor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives Public Works Report PW 2626 successful lift project for information, and council approves a single source procurement and authorize the purchase and installation of an accessible lift at the Stanhope Firefighters Community Center to Savera Sales Installation and Service, and council authorized staff to proceed with the necessary electrical and framing work to complete the project, and council approves the total project, including the lift, electrical, and framing work, to be funded from reserves at an upset limit of $55,000 plus applicable taxes.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council.
So we will hear the monthly activity report from the fire chief, and then I think we'll break for lunch. Good morning, chief.
Morning, Mayor, Council.
The floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Through you, Mayor, I would like to highlight a couple items. The first thing is our recruits this past month have written their provincials testing, so we're just waiting for results.
I'm sorry, you're hard to hear.
So our recruit firefighters have just wrote their provincial testing, and we're just waiting for results with full anticipation that they will be certified firefighters when the results come in, which is nice to see. Our training division, along with a lot of firefighters, took through the past year to ensure these firefighters did meet the quality standards of the province for certificate or certified firefighters. On a second note, outside the report, it's just concerning fire bans. We do not have a fire ban in the township or the county at this time. We consult on a daily basis with the MNR for fire ratings, and indices don't support a fire ban in our region at this time. So we'll continue to monitor along with the MNR, and when required, if we need a fire ban, we will advise you and we'll put one in place. But at this time, we don't require one. So a neighboring municipality has done that. So it has been a topic of conversation.
Well, luckily, we're seeing the forecast of a certain amount of rain coming up in the very near future, which is good news.
Definitely.
I hate to ask for rain and that's, in the summer tourism season, but
Yes, and the last thing, just want to highlight, we are being proactive at the fire department for the high temperatures. In my vehicle, I carry a cooler full of frozen water and that for the firefighters. We have consulted with the EMS that we do have an ambulance come to all of our calls outside. Normally they just come to structure fires, but if we were to have a bush fire or anything like that, they will be attending just to ensure the safety of our firefighters. And all our firefighters have N95 masks available just because of the potential of the poor air quality. So we are being proactive that way.
questions for the chief? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the chief's report? Councillor Short-Reed and Richards.
Moved by Counselor Short-Reed, second by Counselor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives Fire Services Report FD 1326 regarding monthly activities for information, and that council appoints Cole Hodgson Firefighter Station 70.
All in favor? That's carried. Which is here.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, sir. I guess we could go ahead and deal with the, it is here. Okay. I would suggest that we break for lunch, and reconvene at 1:45. Will that give you sufficient time? Okay. Welcome back to the open session. The next item on our agenda is, or comes under finance business. The first item is a report on attendance at the AMCTO conference.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Danielson.
Afternoon.
And through you, so this report before council is just a report on my attendance to the AMCTO conference this past June. I just want to take the opportunity to thank council for the wonderful experience. I've listed in my report all the workshops that I attended, as well as this particular year I was selected to participate in the planning committee, so that was a exciting experience. And so I got to moderate 2 sessions. One was with John Mascarin for case law, and the other one was navigating and managing conflict in a diverse workplace. So they were both really great sessions that I was able to moderate and engage with the speakers on. And then I also connected with a few staff from the townships of Faraday, Tudor and Cashel, and the county of Hastings. So that was a good experience. They were the first time I got to engage with the staff there. And additionally, this past spring, which is official now that the annual meeting has happened, I now sit on the Zone 5 network, the Zone 5 committee within AMCTO. So that was something that they asked if I would participate back in the spring. And so they were actually thrilled because it's a while since somebody from the county of Haliburton had joined. So they were thrilled to have somebody back from the county on.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, within the county. So I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity and happy to answer any questions.
Does a zone 5, does that tie in with the same zones that Roma has?
Through you, Mayor, I'm not sure exactly the geographical maps of those, but I can take a look to see if it's the same.
Because I think we're part of Roma's zone 5.
Oh, okay.
So I just kind of said,
Yeah.
wonder if that's just a coincidence or if they tie together. Well, thank you. I mean, it was an excellent report. You obviously attended a lot of sessions and got some good ideas out of it, some of which we may hear about going forward. Any questions or comments? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive that report? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, council receives Treasurer's Report GT 1426 in accordance with the Township's conference policy regarding staff attendance at the 2026 AMCTO conference for information.
All in favor? That's carried. So next is the community tree grant results.
Great, thank you, Mayor Danielson, and through you. This is just a report to advise council that we were unsuccessful to the community tree grant results. Again, unfortunately, however, this time a little bit more optimistic in the notification letter. So previously, they didn't give us individualized feedback, but this past time, they did let us know that our application scored highly competitive. So I'm somewhat optimistic about that. They did actually, well, they don't give us individualized results. They did give us some recommendations. So I'm just wanting to keep it in mind moving forward because I do think that there's some information with the Haliburton County Master Gardeners that we could put in more information to address what they felt that we were lacking in the application. So I'm optimistic for 27 if council's still supportive of trying. I have at the Green Burial opening, I did connect with Carolyn Langdon, and the Master Gardeners are still highly interested in the planting plan and participating, and so they're very supportive of wanting us to apply again. And then at the time I had just found out that we were not successful, and Carolyn and I would like, now that we have a deputy clerk, the 3 of us, so I can kind of get the new deputy clerk up to speed of where we're at, how we got here, kind of. And then a plan going forward. Carolyn has some ideas where we can start some of the planting in October. It wouldn't be the full-blown plan, but we could get some things started on a very minimal amount. But she wants to kind of map that out together, and then I would bring a report back to council, or the new deputy clerk would, and kind of seek approval to utilize to proceed on those things, and then we would apply to the grant again.
So we would use existing reserve funds to do whatever planting we might be able to do this fall?
Yes, through you, Mayor, we'd use the cemetery operating funds.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I mean, I understand that we would be somewhat limited in what we would be able to plant, but there were some plantings that we would be able to do. And, you know, the sooner that we get things started,
Yep,
sooner they'll grow into something that's really noticeable.
yeah. And through you, Mayor, Carolyn actually highly supports fall planting versus spring planting. So
Oh.
I guess the plant species that she's identified in the plan have high success in the fall versus the spring before the heat. So I think that she has some really good ideas on how we could make that happen.
And I really would like to thank you for for your help in organizing the opening ceremony and your participation that day. It really was a lovely event and well done.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess we would could I have a mover and a seconder to receive that report? And maybe support look forward to hearing or asking for more information on fall planting and what that might cost. Councillor Sir Reed, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, Council received Treasurer's Report TT 1526 regarding the community tree grant results for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Nothing under communications. So moving on to administration business. Thanks so much, Sarah. First up is the Dorset Museum Committee update. Minutes from May. Any comments, updates?
They did have a nomination for a new committee member, which the committee was agreement to, and it's going to come to council for approval. So they'll have hopefully have a new member on their committee. At that time, they were preparing for Heritage Day, which is obviously been and gone, but very successful. And other than that, everything else was, actually it was interesting. They're collaborating with the county on a heritage passport with all the museums. So I guess you go and you get stamped and then you get free ice cream or so I'm not sure what it is. I think it's an ice cream cone from Fourth of Dairy. But yeah, they're just moving right along. Their concrete pad is poured for their gazebo. So it's all ready to go for the next step.
Look forward to seeing it there. Mover and a seconder to receive the Dorset Museum update. Councillor Richards, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Richards, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council receives the May 26, 2026 Dorset Heritage Museum Committee meeting minutes for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the Stanhope Museum Committee update. And the minutes from July the 10th. Either one of the committee members want to give us an update?
As stated, unfortunately, our chair has resigned from the committee. She will continue to do work for the museum, but just not in the committee capacity. So we have selected a new committee chair, and that's Carol Moffett. And that is until the end of council. With the change, it has become a request that the email that Adele has been using for the museum be transferred if possible to Carol. So that is a request. And that for future, if there's possibility that there could be an emergency contact person that is potentially staff, so that if we're a very small group, there's only I think 4 of us. 2 of those are being our our council members. So to have someone in-house that would be able to take the reins if that happened. I mean, I'm
Take
sure
the reins.
in regards
What does
to
that-
email,
Okay.
like we don't want something to just go into the ether. I'm sure IT could always recover things if need be, but that is a request from.
So, I mean, there wouldn't be, if in fact, I mean, I see your hand up. There should be no expectation that a staff member be able to respond to an email beyond being able to say, you know, we've received your email and we'll, you know, get back to you as soon as possible, rather than expecting a staffer to give some kind of informative response. It will, hear what Angie's got to say.
Through you, Mayor. Yes, I'm just wondering, Councillor Berry, what that means. Like you said, in an emergency, how do we know that?
Well, if the committee dissolve and there's an open email,
Of course, yeah.
that would count as an emergency.
Mhm.
Or if the person who had access to that email was not available. It's not just if the committee was dissolved. Pardon me? Well, that's a
Semantics.
challenging word. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, go ahead.
And so, maybe if I could ask the committee to just define that a little bit so that there isn't any assumptions. I wouldn't want us to be in a situation where it was assumed that we would do it, excuse me, and then miss something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think given the short number of members of the committee, it's been a discussion on other committees, but I think the two museums, Stanhope specifically, there was a discussion that in the future, there is possible a request for staff support. I don't know where that will land, but we're going to continue as is with the change of chair for the remainder of the term. But going forward, that might be something that comes forward.
Well, and as I suggested to the committee, and you know, I think that it's going to behoove the new council to have a bigger discussion about what we're going to do with committees, how we're going to encourage, you know, committees and a committee structure, how we might go about doing that, and you know, finding a way to encourage volunteers, as well as the implications of how we're going to deal with the expectations of committees to have staff support, because that's a bit of a challenge.
In the interim, we still, the request stands in regards to transferring access from Adele to Carol.
Which requires
IT.
an expenditure. You know, I think that there's money in the budget to allow for that.
I think it's about $700.
Yeah, I believe it requires a new license for that person. And there was a reluctance around that. So perhaps if we could get that approval through the minutes, then we can.
The committee is aware of the cost and this request. It was discussed at the meeting.
Okay.
I'm sorry, when you said there was some reluctance, could you clarify that?
Around the expense.
Oh,
Previously.
reluctance from the committee. It kind of is what it is.
Sabrina and then Jim.
I'm sorry, I just was trying to find the minutes because my understanding was a little bit different than yours, but go ahead, Sabrina.
Yeah,
Councilor Richards.
as far as I understand that the $750 as if we put two people on, but to just transfer from Adele to Carol, it shouldn't incur the $750. So we're not asking for a secondary, we're just asking for a transfer. So I don't think this $750 is on the table right now. Perhaps in the future, they'll have further discussions about that, but it's not for the moment. But further also to Councillor Berry, it's in point D4, that council consider a long-term plan for ongoing support of cultural assets. So that's something that is being requested to council to consider for staff involvement, not only with Stanhope Museum, but Dorset Museum, all of our cultural assets, somebody to take the lead on that from staff. Because as we continue to see volunteerism drop, the last thing that I think any of us want to see is we just no longer have operational museums. so that, I think that's something that, whether it's this council or the next council, it's cultural assets is something that needs to be considered and assigned to somebody's desk.
But I think there has been some feeling by particularly members of the Stanhope Museum Committee that, we have a cultural plan and we're maybe not, giving enough attention or emphasis to that cultural plan. I would wonder what council's thoughts are on, like, I see that request about, some emphasis being placed on, cultural assets being part of the bigger, what are we going to do about committees and responsibilities and, who's going to assist in that? Or would council like to talk about how we're going to deal with keeping a focus on cultural assets separate? Deputy Mayor Dayu?
I'd be curious to hear what they have in mind when they say that, because they've clearly had a conversation about it, and we have a single line about it. So that would be an interesting thing to hear fleshed out.
I think it was all part and parcel of it, of a discussion that, the committee and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was some discussion about whether or not there should be a staff person assigned to assist the Stanhope Museum Committee. And I think that there has been some, probably a little bit of similar rumbling coming out of Dorset. But and it kind of bled into, there's not enough focus on our cultural assets and, what we're doing about, Stanhope's culture and they just kind of wanted some attention and somebody kind of assigned to that or some attention put to that. As well as, there was a substantial discussion about whether or not there should be a staff person assigned to that committee. Councillor Richards.
Yeah, I mean, some of the discussion too was about liaison with staff and the appropriate channels for that liaison versus, council's liaison with the museum and that role versus, an actual staff member being on the committee. Similar to like, Melissa being on the environment committee, Sandra on the former recreation committee, Kaylee on the airport committee. Those are different, perhaps roles and needs, but the chair of the museum shouldn't necessarily be directing any staff member as to what needs the museum have, versus that channeling going through council and then to staff and all of that could potentially be wrapped up in a staff liaison to the museum that would focus on that.
So that would be a shift from the responsibility. The way it's set up right now is that members of council are appointed to committees and, we had 2 members of council on, and as is, the same for the Dorset committee, that if there's action that needs to be taken, that be, the councilor, one or the other of the councilor's responsibility to bring that to the CAO. And I think that's the way you would like to see it continue, as opposed to an individual, whether it be the chair of the committee or a staff person having to go, and appear to be directing individual members of staff. I think it's probably part of a bigger discussion that we are going to need to have. Go ahead, Angie.
Yes, through you, Mayor. It definitely will need to be because certainly, the examples that Councillor Richards named there are staff on those committees because that's part of their job. Airport does airport, environment does environment. We don't have a cultural staff person. And so the facilities certainly are, like, for example, Chris, as part of his role, looks after Lockship. But we don't have anybody that has culture in their job description. So that's a bigger discussion as far as, okay, you're adding something to someone's job description that has bigger implications, or you're adding a position. So very, very different than I think what council's thinking.
Deputy Mayor Dayu?
It strikes me that we're less than a month away from seeing what the recommendation options are for the governance study. And I know we're months away from anyone taking a decision on it, but I suspect that if there's any structural change that has to do with staff, it would be in accordance with the general alignment of where we're going on the governance study. So maybe if there's something a bit more urgent or time sensitive, maybe like a liaison staff member who could sit and just start gathering ideas without having a responsibility for it, or something that just makes the connection but doesn't increase responsibilities, just to take us through to the time when the governance study results kind of tell us how things might roll out.
That's why we have the structure that we have in place right now. If there's action that needs to be taken, some work that needs to be done on behalf of, like, if something's broken at the museum and needs to be fixed, that a member of council take that to Angie and Angie can direct that to happen rather than trying to, get a staff person responsible for doing that at this point in time.
Yeah, on something like that is a little more, direct, but the concern is that the museum is an asset of the township. And to not have that on any single staff person's desk as a part of their greater portfolio, that's a concern. Going into the future.
The building
It's
as an
great
asset
that it-
itself, the
yeah.
building as an asset itself
Yeah.
already has someone who's responsible for that, for updating it, like, I'm not sure if it's Chris or Adam.
But-
And or Adam's staff, so that's already in place.
But
I
as
get the
a-
feeling it's more, protection of our culture in a broader sense than looking after a building. Which is something that I think we really need to talk about. And to your point, one of the things that has come out of some of the surveys that have resulted from the governance study is a broader concern about culture and individuality of each of the municipalities and how those are going to be protected, and or is it going to be lost? And so, I see your point about, we're just about to enter into a broader discussion about those things. So to make a decision at this point in time, well, it's hard to say how long all of that might take. Or where it might land, depending on what the new council's perspectives are. So I'm not quite sure where to take this at this point in time. I'm hearing from the CAO that if there's going to be a responsibility assigned to staff member, there needs to be more discussion about how that happens, who it might be, whether there's bandwidth within that person's role. I think everybody's working at pretty much capacity, and we certainly have heard messages coming from council in the last couple of months that, like, okay, hold on, let's put a freeze on hiring. Councillor Shortreed.
Not on the same subject, but similar, is we really need to look at getting some type of succession planning for our volunteers. Like, so many volunteers on so many councils are over 70. And I don't know what's gonna happen when they start leaving. We aren't gonna have any committees because a huge portion of people are at that age. We don't have anybody like younger than 60 on our committees. So we need some type of volunteer roundup to kind of get some younger people on the committees, or they're not going to be any committees.
I don't know whether it's appropriate to say this or not, but it was interesting that came up as a question and an item of discussion during the recent round of interviews that we were having with the CAOs, and one of them had some suggestions with respect to that. So we can go back to take a look at that and
Yeah.
see if it's something, it was like kind of a town hall and talking about, roles and responsibilities of different committees, trying to see what people's interest is. Do they want to be the member of a committee, or do they want to be able to just do something associated with that committee?
Or do they not even know about it?
Well, precisely. They don't necessarily have to become a member of a committee. There may be just some smaller things. For instance, I think there's a number of people who are working as volunteers as hosts. for the museum, but they're not members of the committee. And the same is true for the airport. There's like a big number of volunteers to help with the events, but they're not committee members. So yeah, I think there needs to be maybe some information put out there, some thought given into how we're going to do that. But I see that as being the next council's role to do.
Just through you, Mayor, that was a strategic goal of councils to do a recruitment strategy for volunteers, and that is something that Chad is actively working on. So
I would look forward to hearing more about that. Councillor Richards.
I think that that just, you know, it goes more to the point where, you know, we can put in these strategies to gain more volunteers, and hopefully we're successful in a collaboration of ways. But, you know, ultimately, just like we've seen with the Recreation Committee, what happens at committees seems to fall back on staff. And we don't have cultural staff for either of our museums. And now we're talking about a governance strategy and a possible amalgamation. And where's that going? So yeah, I could end up living at a county level, but it's a discussion that needs to be had, because there should be some staff involvement, even if it's minor at this point in time versus zero.
Just as a matter of information, who does the minutes for the Environment and Stewardship Committee?
Melissa does.
Melissa does. Go ahead.
if I may ask a question,
Mhm.
Is the committee looking for administrative support currently? Because like, as you mentioned, Mayor, there is someone, like the Public Works Manager looks after facilities, so he definitely, you know, looks after the museums. So I get a sense that's what the museum's looking for, is administrative support.
Well, I think there were actually two sides to that conversation, because there was part of the conversation that suggested there should be a staff person identified as a support person for the museum. And then there was discussion about how direction would be provided, and through, like, whether it would be as it is now, that, you know, if something needs to be done, the member of council, one of the members of council would come to you and talk to you about it. There was discussion about the possibility of having a staff member identified to do that, to bring that information forward, which to me is just asking somebody else to do the same thing. And you know, how we utilize our staff is your responsibility, and you know, how we sort through that is, you know, we probably need to hear, you know, allow you some time to give it some thought. Councillor Richards.
Yeah, I think that's the current committee that's in existence. You know, is not seeking any urgency in this matter. I think that they are happy with the current structure as is, but it's in consideration of the future. And you know, most of our committee is aged, and the concern is the succession of where that ends up. And it would be a terrible loss if it ended up nowhere because of the lack of volunteerism for all the work that they put in for a few decades now into that museum. And so I think a cultural portfolio maybe not appropriate for a new hire of a single person. Most municipalities have it living within recreation and culture somewhere. And so I think that that's, again, whether it's at Algonquin Highlands or it's at the county level, that's a discussion that needs to be had.
at
Well,
some
and
point.
it's a tough one because we don't know what direction that, the county
Yep.
study is going to go at all.
Yep.
And how much attention or emphasis would be placed on cultural assets and so that's kind of a tough one. So I guess I'm not sure what you've got for a resolution, but I know that we do need to approve the recommended changes to the terms of reference. And maybe a request that the, CAO be asked to give some thought to how we might address the recommendations or suggestions that the committee's making. Would that work for everyone? Pardon me?
I can read what I have if that's helpful.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Be it resolved, council receives Stanhope Heritage Museum Committee minutes for dated July 10th, 2026 for information, and council directs the committee's terms of references be amended to reduce the number of public members to 3, reduce the number of required meetings to a minimum of quarterly or as required, remove the position of treasurer and assign those duties to the committee, except the production of the monthly statements. Council authorized the museum email to be transferred to the new chair, Carol Moffett, and that council acknowledge a request for long-term planning of cultural assets.
Could I have a mover to seconder to that? Councillor Berry, Councillor Richards? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Well, next up would be a report on business continuity planning. Afternoon, Michelle.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Through you, Mayor, this report in front of you provides an update on the township's ongoing business continuity efforts. The report outlines progress that we've achieved to date, starting in 2026, as well as additional areas of work that require further development. This really has been a collaborative effort across all of the township departments, and it builds on years of work and experience and commitment that the township has had to business continuity. As we continue to advance this work throughout the year, we will come to council, report back, and provide updates on progress, as well as some key milestones. I'm happy to answer any questions about the report that you may have.
Questions? A lot of work being done there and an excellent report. Thank you for that. No questions? Okay, we look forward to hearing how things develop as we go forward. So could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive that report? Councillor Short Reed and Richards, thank you.
By Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Richards, be it resolved, council receives report DT 426 regarding business continuity planning update for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the adoption of the protocol for election of a deputy mayor. So I see that is under the bylaw section of the agenda, unless anyone has any comments to make about that. Okay. Obviously, as well, we have the appointment of the new deputy clerk, Sarah Brislin, and that will be under the bylaw section as well. Hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to meet her. Maybe you may not have yet, but you'll have that chance. We have another Sarah. And also under the bylaw section, the appointment of our treasurer and the repeal of the deputy clerk portion of her role. So under planning, we have nothing. So next would be external board meetings. Anything to report from the Dorset Partnership or Health Hub?
There won't be anything till the fall now with them.
Have they met at all?
Yes, but we had a council meeting that day. I was here, you wanted me here, so I didn't go.
Anything under Upper Trent Water Management or Muskoka Watershed Council?
Nope, nothing at this time.
The OPP Detachment Board has not met since we last met, and we have a meeting next week, I believe. So I'll bring further information about that. Anything from the library?
Nothing of note.
Anything on community safety and well-being?
Only that the No Wrong Door event that happened a couple of months ago continues to be well referred to and considered, and that work is continuing in that regard, and people are pretty stoked for it.
Well, in the schedule of events, if anyone has looked at the calendar that's developed by the Community Safety and Wellbeing Committee, is it extraordinary. And if anyone says that there are no activities scheduled for, say, elders or people with challenges, they're mistaken, because there really is a heck of a lot of really good work going on there. Anything under Muskoka River watershed?
Not until the spring. That's a freshet related committee.
Okay, I'm under county council. I think the only thing that I would bring forward at this point in time is you've all received an email about the meeting on August the 12th. And any and all members of all the councils are invited to attend that meeting in the new council chambers, I might add. And if you cannot attend, there will be, but you need to let them know if you want a link to be able to attend via Zoom and be able to question or comment. Angie?
If I may, Madam Mayor, yeah, if you could let me know as soon as you can, and then I can let Pam know, so she can set up the links.
Okay. I believe that Deputy Mayor Dayo and myself will be present. So I'd ask the other members of council, if you're interested in attending in either form. I think it's going to be an interesting meeting to hear the full report, to hear what the recommendations are, and to allow any and all members of all of the lower tiers to be able to hear the presentation and ask any questions that they've got. Will be just fabulous. And I'm really looking forward to having our first meeting in the new council chambers. Everybody's quite excited about that. And there will be, I think, a little bit further into the fall, a kind of an open house and an opportunity for everyone to be welcomed into the new council chambers, see what it looks like. Maybe they'll tie that to the inaugural meeting of county council. It's hard to say, but anyway, there will be an opportunity for everyone to see the new council chambers. Are there any notices of motion? Hearing none, were any items under the correspondence asked to be brought forward? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the correspondence listing? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council receives the July 16th, 2026 correspondence listing for information.
All in favor? That's carried. We now have several items to discuss under the closed session. So could I have a mover and a seconder to move into closed? Councillor Shortreed and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, council adjourns its open session at 1:29 PM in order to proceed into closed session for the purpose of discussing the following. One, information supplied in confidence by a third party in accordance with section 239(2)(I) of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended. Third-party correspondence provided in confidence containing financial information. Two, personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal employee in accordance with section 239(2)B of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, regarding candidate for council committee.
All in favor? That's carried. Welcome back to the open session. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the bylaws. So could I have a mover and a seconder to that effect? Councillor Shortreed and Barry?
Moved by Counselor Shortreed, second by Counselor Barry. Be it resolved, the following bylaws be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with a corporate seal affixed. 2026-52 to amend Clean and Clear bylaw 2023-11, 2026-53 to amend AMPS Clean and Clear, 2026-70 to appoint election of a deputy mayor protocol policy, 2026-71 to appoint a deputy clerk, and 2026-72 to appoint a treasurer.
All in favor? That's carried. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the confirmatory bylaw? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed,
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Counselor Shortreed. Be it resolved that bylaw 2026-73, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its July 16th, 2026 regular meeting, be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with a corporate seal affixed.
all in favor? And finally, a motion to adjourn. Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Counselor Shortreed, second by Counselor Barry. Be it resolved, the meeting is hereby adjourned at 1:46 p.m.
All in favor? That's carried.